The tall grass along the banks of the Tumblestone rippled beneath a late summer wind, its hushed sigh the only reply Robb Stark received after his counselors filed out of the pavilion. They had settled nothing, only circled the same bitter labyrinth of choice and consequence until the candles bled wax upon the maps. Robb remained, unmoving, brow shadowed beneath auburn curls. His gloved fingers held over the river-charted parchment as though the black ink roads might pulse with life and whisper a clearer path. Across the pavilion's canvas walls, the gold and red sunset cast wavering banners of light that danced like flames upon steel helms and stacked shields. The camp beyond lay strangely quiet. It was not the hush before battle. Robb had learned to taste that silence, taut and quivering with the promise of blood, but a lull born of famine of purpose. Thousands of Northmen waited upon one boy king's whim and one young wolf's decision, their faith forming a weight heavier than any breastplate. Robb closed his eyes and heard instead the river and the last words of his mother. "Spare them, my son. Spare the North." Catelyn's face had been pale as winter milk as she spoke, the lines about her mouth etched deeper than any blade mark. She had lost a husband, nearly lost 2 sons, and now watched as her eldest stood between crown and ruin. Duty warred within her, but it was the promise she had made to Ned Stark when they wed that triumphed in her pleading. "Keep our children safe, keep our folk safe." The stones of Winterfell, now blackened by iron-born torches, echoed that vow. Robb's wolf, Grey Wind, padded into the pavilion, yellow eyes catching the firelight. The direwolf's presence, once a comfort, now reminded him cruelly of the wild freedom slipping away. Grey Wind paced, restless, sensing the turmoil, and at last settled by the tense opening, hackles half raised as though guarding against an enemy invisible. Robb rolled the letter again, the royal edict sealed with the crowned stag and lion. Its parchment still bore the faint scent of lilac perfume, Cersei's flourish of control. His Grace, Joffrey of houses Baratheon and Lannister, first of his name, offers clemency. Clemency, the word tasted of ash. Bow the knee, relinquish the northern crown, send hostages, and the North would be spared the harrow that Tywin Lannister threatened to unleash. Refuse, and the old god's trees would drink deep of northern blood. He thought of the ravens that had brought darker tidings. Winter stores burned in Deepwood Motte, iron-born raiders slitting throats in Barrow Tun, Bolton levies whispering treachery. Every dawn carried news that carved at the North's flanks like frostbite. How long before starvation and despair would do what no Lannister host had yet managed? Break the Northern Army's spirit. A soft throat-clearing broke the hush. "Your Grace," Maester Vyman said, stooping beneath the entry flap, his chain of many metals rattling. "The men grow anxious. They beg decision." Robb's voice emerged low, steady. "What word from the twins?" "Lord Fry insists on reply within a fortnight. His patience with our delays wears thin." Robb nodded. The phrase smelled weakness wherever it pooled. Walder Fry would sell a son's honor for a crust of bread if he might name its price twice. Yet the twins still guarded his road home. "Tell them a decision comes soon," Robb said. Vyman hesitated. "And shall I prepare more ravens south?" Robb looked to Grey Wind, who whined as though urging the hunt. "Not yet." When the maester left, Robb released the breath he had not known he held. He remembered the words of Great John Umber, thundered across the War Council. Better to die on one's feet than live bowed. Roose Bolton had been a quieter serpent. Kneel, regain strength, rise again. Between those extremes stretched every beating northern heart, fragile and fierce. Night fell. Torches guttered outside, throwing shadows that writhed upon linen walls. Robb worked a whetstone along his sword's edge, letting the rhythmic rasp drown his thoughts. At last, fatigue claimed him. He slept fitfully and dreamed of ice cracking beneath a red sun, and of figures kneeling in fresh snow, crowns sinking beneath slush. Dawn's gray light seeped into the pavilion like watered milk. Catelyn arrived before the camp's horn sounded. She bore neither suppliant's eyes nor queen's steel this morning, only a mother's fragile calm. "You did not sleep," she observed. "Nor did you," he replied. She touched the rolled parchment that lay between them. Have you decided? Robb flexed his right hand, as if the choice were trapped in his bones. I have. Silence yawned until he added, I must spare our people. I will bend the knee. Catelyn closed her eyes in relief and sorrow both. You choose mercy. Your father would have understood. He would have fought, Robb said bitterly. He would have fought when victory was possible, she countered, when he could look each man in the eye and promise hope. What hope remains if winter finds us leaderless and starving? Robb stared at the old wolf on his shield, its paint chipped from a dozen clashes. Hope lives in survival. A horn's low note summoned captains. Within the council tent, the lords gathered: Great John Umber, Karstark, Bolton, Lady Mormont's envoy, Galbart Glover, Meage Mormont herself, dour and unflinching. Steel eyes met Robb's as he stood. I have made my decision, he began, voice strong. Gretchen's booming protest crashed at once. Kneel to that golden stag? You'd trade Wolf's honor for a Lannister leash. Our honor dies with our people if we persist, Robb said. We lack fresh levies, we lack grain, we lack the bridges home. You speak cowardice, Karstark hissed. No, Lady Mormont snapped, surprising many. He speaks of living to fight another day, if the gods grant such days. She turned to Robb. But remember, the North remembers. Kneel today if you must, yet let the lion never sleep easily. Robb inclined his head in gratitude. My terms are set. Hostages shall be offered, myself and Sansa included, for a time. The Lannisters swear protection of northern lands and customs. We rebuild. In secrecy, we prepare for tomorrow. Roose Bolton's pale eyes glinted. A cunning wolf. Robb felt a chill. A pragmatic one. When the council dissolved, he sensed half were with him, half merely waiting to see which way the wind howled. Treachery would stalk any path, sworn or spurned. He must be wary. The letter was inked before midday, each word measured as though a sword stroke. He knelt upon wolf fur and sealed it with the direwolf's head pressed in dark wax. And so the young wolf's howl softened to a growl across parchment, carried south by raven. Joffrey Baratheon received the missive in the throne room, gilded lions yawning above. Sansa Stark stood to one side, a court flower wilting in foreign soil. Her breath caught when the king smirked. So the pup tucks his tail at last, Joffrey crowed, his voice echoing off the vaults. Good. I shall have the North's fealty. Let them send the pup and the bitch to heel before me. Tyrion Lannister, newly returned his hand, lifted one brow. Your grace may choose more delicate phrasing. The realm needs healing, not further insult. Joffrey waved him off. I will have them kneel publicly. I'll make the wolf whelp kiss my sword. Cersei's smile reached neither eyes nor soul. We shall arrange a gracious reception, she purred, mind already layering spider silk snares. In the gallery, Tywin Lannister's bronze gaze measured the boy king's triumph and found it brittle. He leaned toward his brother Kevan. The North bows for now, but no wolf forgets its fangs. We must station teeth of our own. Kevan inclined his head. The Dreadfort men will oblige. Tywin's mouth thinned at mention of Bolton, yet he did not gainsay. Every dagger had its use. Sansa's heart hammered. Robb is coming. She pictured her brother riding through city gates, banners lowered. She ached with pride and dread. Every step might spell salvation for the North, but doom for the wolf-hearted boy she once knew. She whispered a prayer to the maiden and another to the heart tree she had not seen in moons. Weeks later, drums rolled along dusty roads south of the Trident. Robb's host marched stripped of rampant banners, colors subdued. Yet the scent of pine and snow clung to their cloaks, and small folk along the Gold Road whispered of storms hidden within each fur-lined hood. As they neared King's Landing's towering walls, the air thickened with the stench of marsh and humanity. Gray winds snarled at unseen threats beyond the rushes. Robb stroked his wolf's neck, though his own hackles mimicked the beast's. At dawn, the gates yawned. Trumpets blared, a fanfare sharpened by southern pride. Tywin met them first, astride a white courser beneath a crimson cloak. Behind him unfurled a modest honor guard, polished but sparse, as though to mock the shrunken northern escort. Robb dismounted, helm beneath one arm. Grey wind bristled when Lannister spears closed ranks. Tywin studied the dire wolf the way one appraised siege engines. "Robb Stark," the Lord said, voice iron. "You come to do homage to his grace?" "I come to keep my people alive," Robb answered. "Then see you keep your temper sharper than your sword. Kings thrive on obedience." Tywin gestured. "The wolf shall be kennelled behind the dragon pit." "No," Robb interrupted, and Grey Wind's growl rumbled like distant thunder. Lannister horses skittered. Tywin's jaw flexed. "Very well, but mind your beast." They rode through Flea Bottom while whispers rippled over rooftops. Children pointed, crying, "The young wolf!" Fishmongers spat in fear of reprisal, remembering Tywin's wrath upon towns that cheered his foes. Somewhere, a singer plucked a cautious chord, weaving a new lyric. When the Red Keep's gates swallowed them, Robb felt the stones breathe heat as though the hill underfoot still smoldered from dragon flame centuries dead. Inside, silk banners fluttered like captured birds. Painted columns rose thicker than Winterfell's inner towers. It was a world built to dwarf visitors, to remind them of how small any rebellion stood beside crimson power. In the throne room, the Iron Throne awaited, grotesque and glorious. Joffrey perched upon its jagged seat, lion-brocaded doublet gleaming. Cersei stood to his left, Tyrion to his right, the small council arrayed like carved pieces. Trumpets silenced. Robb advanced alone, every boot echo magnified. Grey Wind paced at his side, permitted by Tywin's grudging nod, to remind the court that wolves do not kneel easily. At the throne's base, Robb stopped. He unsheathed his sword, laid it flat across gauntlet palms, and waited. In the hush, even the blades of the Iron Throne seemed to lean closer, hungry for fresh vows. Joffrey leaned forward, boy lips curling. "Kneel." Robb's knees struck the marble. The sound carried like hammer on anvil. He bowed his head. Grey Wind remained standing, fur bristling. "Do you, Robb of House Stark, swear fealty to me, Joffrey of Houses Baratheon and Lannister, first of my name?" Joffrey's voice rang high, half crack, half command. In that heartbeat, Robb felt the weight of every northern gaze across half a realm. He saw his father's spirit, felt the cold of Godswood snows. A simple word cut across the memory. "I swear," he said, voice steady. "I yield my crown for my people's safety." Joffrey smiled, a brittle thing. "Then rise, Lord Paramount of the North. Rise and swear your sword to my service." Robb rose, extended sword hilt first. Joffrey grasped it with thin fingers, lifted it awkwardly, then returned it. Bloodlust lit his eyes. He burned to demand more humiliation, but Tyrion coughed softly. The Lannister lion reined its cub. Applause scattered like stones upon water, thin, forced, yet some breathed easier. War's teeth dulled, for a time. Cersei descended the steps. "His Grace accepts your loyalty." She pressed a golden wolf brooch into Robb's palm. "Wear this in remembrance of what you surrendered." Robb bowed. "The North will remember what it was promised." She smiled frost. "See that it remembers gratitude." From the dais, Tywin surveyed the tableau, spies behind every expression. He noted which Northmen's hands clenched hilts, which breathed sighs, which whispered. Each would matter. Sansa emerged from behind a pillar, eyes shimmering. For a moment, the siblings' gazes locked, two Starks adrift in a sea of red. Hope flickered, fragile as candle flame. Grey Wind's growl cut the hush. Joffrey flinched. "Remove that beast." Tyrion stepped forward. "Your Grace, allow me. The wolf saved my life once. Perhaps he will find our courtyard pleasant." Robb nodded once. Trust here was poison, yet he had few choices. The ceremony finished, Robb turned, sword sheathed. He felt empty, stripped of wind and snow. Yet as he stepped away, gray wind padded beside him and Sansa's whispered name reached his ear, carrying the scent of home. That night, the Red Keep feasted. Roasted boar and honeyed locusts filled trestle tables while singers strained to birth new odes to royal mercy. Robb sat near the high table, the eyes of Lannister guards weighing upon his shoulders. Wine washed tongues loose, yet many a Northman kept his cup untasted, the color too close to traitor's blood. Tyrion found Robb's elbow. "A clever retreat," the imp murmured. "You traded a crown for time." "Time is life," Robb said. "Indeed, and life breeds opportunity. You'll need allies in these gilded halls." Robb shot a wary look at Cersei laughing with Marjorie Tyrell. "Allies seldom come without strings." Tyrion sipped wine. "Better strings than chains," some might argue. Across the hall, Roose Bolton conversed with Lord Baelish, their smiles thin as blades. Robb felt a stir of unease. Treachery budded fastest in dark corners. When trumpets sounded anew, Joffrey rose. "Let all know that the North's loyalty pleases me. Lord Stark shall remain in King's Landing as honored guest. His lovely sister Sansa shall share in his company." Robb's stomach nodded. A gilded cage awaited. Joffrey continued, "To seal our newfound accord, I name Robb Stark Warden of the North in my stead." Gasps fluttered. "He will return home once his oath of fealty is secured by proper hostages." Tywin's jaw worked, but he inclined his head, feigning approval. Tyrion closed his eyes. Hostages were leashes. The boy king merely tightened them. Robb stood, forced calm. "His grace honors me. I accept." Cersei's smile gleamed serpentine. Later, as candles guttered, Robb slipped onto a balcony overlooking Blackwater's moonlit waters. Gray wind rested his head upon Robb's boot. From the darkness, footsteps approached. "Sansa." "Robb," she whispered, and for a heartbeat they were children again, racing the walls of Winterfell. He drew her close. "Are you well?" "I survive," she said, voice brittle. "You should not have come. I came for all of us." She nodded, tears glimmering. "Then you must watch those who call themselves friends. The Queen plots always. Littlefinger too." "I know." He touched her cheek. "But winter teaches wolves patience. We bend, not break." Gray wind's ears pricked. Below in the courtyard, torches flickered where guards changed posts. Traps already shifted in shadow. Robb whispered, "We will find a way home." Sansa managed a small, brave smile. "The North remembers." Moon after moon passed. Robb remained a guest, but his chambers were watched, his letters read. Houses with northern blood petitioned kings landing with grievances. Fry tolls doubled, Ironborn raids renewed. Each plea twisted Robb's gut, yet he masked outrage behind courteous smiles. He trained in the yard with Lannister knights, tempering skill and rumor alike, ever mindful of spies perched in windows. Gray wind roamed the castle's darker corridors at night, slipping past kennel boys who feared his silent tread. The direwolf's keen senses mapped hidden doors and secret stairwells. One dusk, he returned with a scrap of Bolton skin scent and the copper tang of old blood. Robb understood his enemies plotted already. In council sessions, Tyrion passed small scrolls to Robb, coded hints. A Tyrell contact sympathetic to northern cause, a river route unguarded, gold for bribes. Robb played the supplicant at table, all the while knotting a web of his own. Yet Joffrey's cruelties inflamed the city. Executions for jest, whores whipped for his amusement, pies flung at beggars. Each outrage fueled the embers of dissent beneath Robb's calm. Whispers flowered. The young wolf still has claws. Men approached Robb in cobbled alleys, offering blades, secrets, coin. Some he accepted, some he turned, but every offer proved the veneer of peace cracking. Then came the raven from the wall. Wildling hordes massing in the frostfangs, the night's watch harried. Jon Snow's hand penned pleas for aid, though he dared not name himself. Robb's heart wrenched. He petitioned the small council for support, But Cersei dismissed northern ghosts, and Joffrey laughed. Let crows freeze. That night Robb knelt before the heart tree he had carved in memory upon a courtyard cedar. He whispered to gods old and new, asking whether his surrender had damned them all. Winter's first snow dusted the city, a thin white on crimson tiles. Children chased flakes, never dreaming of storms that birthed them. Robb watched from battlements, gray wind at his side, and felt the weight of seasons shifting. Across the librarium corridors, Maester Pycelle shuffled with a sealed letter for Tywin. Within it lay Bolton's latest report. The Dreadfort reinforced, Carhold restless, Fry ambition swelling. Tywin read in silence. He mused upon a northerner's pride, upon hostages and fragile vows. He considered the cost of mercy and the price of betrayal, weighing them in unseen scales. Then he summoned Ser Gregor Clegane. "Ride north," Tywin said. "Deliver a message of my benevolence to House Bolton, and remind them what befalls those who forget who truly rules." As the mountain departed, the Lion Lord turned his gaze southward to the boy in wolf's skin pacing a gilded cage. Tywin sensed the hour when wolves would grow desperate, and desperation birthed chaos, a chaos he would harness or crush. Robb's plan coalesced as frost silvered the keep's gardens. He charted hidden passages, bribed jailers, whispered to smiths who still revered northern kings. Tyrion fed coin and silence. Sansa embroidered maps into bodice hems, secret blue stitches that outlined tunnels beneath the city. Gray wind ferried scraps of parchment tied to his collar, messages bound for river smugglers. On the eve of the winter solstice, Joffrey decreed a grand celebration, a tourney to display the realm's unity under his reign. Lords and ladies flocked. Banners painted the air with riotous color. Robb entered lists, jousting beneath the direwolf standard re-raised for spectacle. Crowds roared as he unhorsed Ser Lal Crakehall, then Ser Meryn Trant. Joffrey clapped petulantly when Robb bowed. That night, feasting resumed. Wine flowed like red fork floods. Cersei preened, convinced their northern pet had accepted his leash. Tywin's eyes, however, seldom left Robb's table. At midnight, the great bells tolled for the solstice. Fireworks burst above the city, green and gold trailing sparks across the darkness. On that hush of awe, Robb Stark vanished from the high table. Gray wind howled, a long, mournful note that cascaded over rooftops, sending crows aloft. In the confusion, a kitchen boy shouted of unlow. Ked sallyports of guards found sleeping spell-drugged. By dawn, Lannister soldiers scoured alleys, but the young wolf's tracks led only to the river, where burned rope ends smoldered beside a missing ferry. Noble heads gathered in council as panic trilled like unseen bells through the Red Keep. Sansa, questioned by the Queen, feigned shock, tears genuine. Tyrion spun tales of secret lovers and moonlit wagers, muddying every trail. Only Tywin remained silent, fingers steepled, mind racing across battlegrounds unseen. He smelled war's distant smoke. Far up the Blackwater's tributaries, Robb Stark knelt in a moonlit clearing beside Grey Wind. There, free of city stench, he inhaled pine and promise. Around him gathered men in cloaks mottled like forest shadow. Brotherhood deserters, River Lords hunters, blacksmiths whose grandsires had knelt to Torrhen Stark. They touched swords to their chests. "Your Grace," they whispered, though no crown adorned his brow. Robb stood. "I am no king. Not yet. Only a man who would see his people freed. We ride north." Cheers rose like thunder beneath the trees. He turned to the dire wolf. "Home, old friend. We reclaim it." Gray Wind bared white teeth, eyes blazing with moonfire. Robb's journey had begun anew, not as king crowned in bronze, but as wolf in shadow. The knee he bent bought breathing space, but breathing space could birth storm. And this storm, slow gathering across snows and pines, would one day break with a howl that even the Iron Throne might hear. And somewhere in the Red Keep's highest tower, Sansa Stark stilled her beating heart and stitched another map into silken lining. Each threaded path a promise of the road the wolves would take, when the time to rise again finally came. The night wind was colder this far upriver, carrying whispers of pine and ice, but Robb Stark welcomed the sting upon his cheeks. Somewhere behind him, miles of snaking water and reed-choked inlets folded back toward the city he had abandoned. Ahead lay the kingdoms of men who still swore by Weirwood and Direwolf, lands now smoldering beneath foreign boots. He reminded himself that retreat was not defeat. It was the drawing of a bowstring before release. Gray wind prowled the riverbank, jaws parting to taste every new scent. The men who had gathered under the pines dared not approach the beast too closely, yet their gazes followed him with hushed reverence. Half were riverfolk bold enough to remember Edmure Tully's kindness. Half were small northern companies who had slipped through the Twins disguised as traders or ferrymen. They named themselves the Quiet Pack, for each swore to bite only when their lord commanded. Robb knew it was a ragged company. Archers with mismatched fletching, sellswords whose mail hung loose with missing rings, but courage mattered more than crests. He crouched beside a moss-slicked boulder and studied the crude map scratched into the soil. 3 charcoal strokes for the Green Fork, another for the King's Road, dots for Bolton outposts, a ragged F for Fry. Every move must be weighed against invisibility. With the Twins denied, he would skirt westward through the neck of the Wolfswood, trusting crannogmen and stone skippers to open paths unseen by lion eyes. Glover men held out their still, according to ravens past intercepted. A lantern bobbed among the trees. Ser Brynden Tully emerged, gray hair hidden beneath a hood, the trout of Riverrun embroidered faintly on his jerkin. The Blackfish had fled the city 2 nights after Robb, smuggled out through a postern gate by Varys's little birds in exchange for dark promises. He carried news as sharp as the dagger at his belt. Tywin ransacks every house between the Wendwater and the Trident, Brynden reported, voice pitched low. He marched the mountain north with 300 heavy horse, too fast for scouts, too cruel for mercy. They burn a village at dawn, another at dusk, then ride on. And Roose Bolton, the Blackfish's mouth twisted. He has put the Dreadfort to sword practice, conscripting every lad above 12. Says it is to defend the north in your absence. In my absence, Robb echoed, tasting the bitterness. And whose banner do those new blades fly, I wonder? That is the question, is it not? Brynden's eyes narrowed like a hawk's. We must reach the Bar-Rollins first, cut Lord Bolton's path, remind the hill clans where true loyalties lie. Robb nodded, though dread stirred. To ride against Tywin's anvil with Bolton's hammer at his back could crush his cause before it lived again. Yet if he waited, winter would arrive with iron chains. Tonight we cross, he decided. At first light we melt into the neck. No more company fires, no torches. We move like ghosts. Men dispersed without salute, stepping carelight over fallen pine needles. Gray wind loped to his master, nosed Robb's hand, then bolted ahead to scout the riverbend. Back in King's Landing, moonstone clouds veiled the night sky as Sansa Stark traced unseen stitches along her sleeve, threading thought into motion. Every courtyard torch guttering below her window became another star to navigate by. Shay, folding linens by the hearth, hummed a body-reach tune, outwardly unconcerned by the hush beyond stone walls. Only when the last servant footsteps faded did her voice drop. Another blue thread tonight? Shay asked, feigning idle conversation. 2, Sansa whispered. Her fingers never paused, dipping needle through silk in patterns that only her brother would read. Bastion manned. Queen doubts. Baelish stirs. Castle spiderwebs thickened daily. Littlefinger gifting Joffrey a silver-hilted dagger for hunting dangerous beasts. Cersei entertaining Lord Bolton's squire with sly questions about northern passes. Tyrion had warned Sansa, every whisper here breeds a blade. She had replied, then let the whispers be ours. Lannister jailers changed shifts at the top of every hour. Sansa kept the cadence in her head. At the 3rd hour past moonrise, she slipped from her chambers clothed in drab servant gray, hair bound tight beneath a knit cap. Shay walked by her side, tray in hand, gliding through lesser corridors toward Maegor's Holdfast. 2 guards lounged by the iron-bound door, nodding at Shay's familiar face. The king's handmaid had reason to bear refreshments anywhere. They never glanced twice at the other girl scurrying behind, head bowed. Past the threshold, Sansa followed a stair spiraling downward into catacombs where forgotten Targaryen princes moldered. Torchlight tremored across dragon-mouthed sarcophagi. Dust made every breath taste of ash. There, hidden among cobwebbed alcoves, Tyrion waited, lantern shuddered. "It grows riskier each visit," the imp murmured, offering Sansa a wineskin. "Cersei's sparrows flit in every dark." Sansa sipped the watered wine. "Risk cannot be weighed against what we owe," she said. "Do you have news?" "The mountain rides north of Maidenpool. My informant says he carries Bolton colors alongside the lion. If they meet the young wolf, steel will answer loyalty." Sansa's throat tightened. "Then the time is now. How soon until your river smuggler returns?" "He waits nightly beneath King's Gate for a signal." Tyrion produced a small glass vial. Inside swirled lamp oil tinted with jade. "Shatter this in Blackwater's tide, set it aflame, and the green bloom will call him. But only once. The alchemists guard wildfire more fiercely than virgin daughters." Sansa tucked the vial beneath her cloak. "When my brother needs it, the river will burn." Tyrion studied her. "You've grown sharper than widow's wail, my lady." She bowed. "A Stark learns, my lord, or else becomes prey." A distant clatter echoed up the stair. Shay stiffened. Tyrion drew back a tapestry, revealing a narrow tunnel half-bricked centuries ago. Sansa slipped through, pressing the vial to her breast as though it were her heart itself. On the King's Road's western spur, stretched between low stone walls and ironwood thickets, Ser Gregor Clegane spurred his destrier over the frost-bleached ground, helm casting monstrous shadows. Ahead, a hamlet's single chimney exhaled, innocent of its doom. 3 riders bore flayed-man banners. 3 bore crimson lions. They fanned out like vultures. John Amblet, once a miller, now conscript in Roose Bolton's vanguard, watched Clegane's approach with a sickness churning his gut. He had ridden south at his lord's summons, believing the Dreadfort would shield the north, but the things he had seen, the tortures the bastard of Bolton performed for Clegane's amusement, tore away every childhood tale of honorable lords. Last night, he knelt in camp shadows and begged the old gods for a sign. Now, amid wheeling crows, he saw it. A lone girl barefoot on the path, hair like summer wheat, too young to carry fear properly. She stood directly where the mountain's path would trample her. Jon spurred forward, shouting, waving. Clegane's gauntlet hand swung, mace crushing Jon's voice into a spray of bone. The girl fled screaming into woods. The mountain laughed. That laugh, raw butcher's joy, cracked something in the hearts of 2 Bolton men who had lost sisters to ironborn raids. They exchanged a glance, then reined aside, guiding their steeds into briar hush. Breath held, they let the column canter past. The flayed man's leer upon their shields felt suddenly heavier than pyramid stones. When dusk settled, they whistled thrush calls into the next reeds. A hooded ferryman answered. Thus the quiet pack grew by 2 more swords. Robb's column advanced through mist, pace set by crossbowmen watching every ridge. The neck proved treacherous even to native sons. Sucking peat, floating islands that drifted underfoot, clouds of midges biting eyes and ears. Cranagman guides painted themselves in mud, swimming ahead to probe for firmer ground. At night, they taught Riverlanders to weave reed boats shaped like giant bowls, silent and light enough to carry across banks. Robb slept little, half dreaming of burning towers and snarling dwarves, but rose eager each dawn to feel the mud cool between his fingers. 5 days in, ravens found them. One from Galbart Glover at Deepwood Motte, Ironborn raiding again. We await true lord. Another from Lady Meage Mormont, Bear Island still yours. We will not kneel to lions. Sail soon. The last bore no seal, only a bloody thumbprint. Fry collects heads of deserters. Trust no crossing. Each scroll Robb read twice, then burned. His father had said the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Now Robb felt every letter he consigned to flame strike like an unseen blade. On the 7th morning, A ranger returned bearing a prisoner. One of Bolton's men, gaunt and shaking. He fell to knees before Robb. "My lord, mercy," the man begged. He spoke of Clegane's path, Bolton's orders to seize Winterfell, of how flayed captives hung from Dreadfort ramparts as a greeting to their rightful king. His words spilled like rot water, then ended in sobs. Robb's captains counseled hanging, lest spies multiply. Robb studied the broken soldier, recalling John Amblet, that miller's son who once helped wash Hodder at Winterfell stables. This man's face could have been John's. "You will not die today," Robb said. "You will earn life. Guide us. Swear by your heart tree that you'll draw no blade against your kin again." Tears streaked the man's cheeks. He swore, voice cracking. Some Northmen muttered, uneasy with such lenience, but Lady Mormont's envoy nodded grim approval. Mercy tempered iron. Across leagues, in the Tower of the Hand, Tyrion Lannister pressed wax to parchment, sealing another letter to be flown by Raven at moonrise. He had staked more than reputation on the Stark Wolf's gamble. Should Robb fail, Cersei's knives would find Tyrion first. Yet each day the Queen undercut her own position, seizing Reach grain stores meant for the hungry, advancing Joffrey's wedding celebrations while plague rumors slithered through Flea Bottom. The realm teetered on a blade's edge. Varys entered on soft slippers, hands tucked in lavender sleeves. "A pleasure, my lord. I bear whispers from a spider's web strung as far north as Moat Cailin." Tyrion waved a hand. "Spin them quickly. My candle guttered hours ago." The master of whisperers inclined his smooth head. A rider bearing Bolton colors was found by fishermen near the ferry bridge, disemboweled. Upon his body, a parchment pinned with a wolf's fang. "The North remembers." Tyrion allowed himself a thin smile. "Then the game quickens. One must hope pieces do not scatter before we glimpse the end board," Varys said, voice thick with concern. "Chaos favors those already armored." "You mean my father?" Varys' silence was confirmation. Tyrion poured wine. "Pieces scatter, yes, but some land blades down. Keep me arrayed of every fallen soldier bearing flayed man's sigil." "Of course." The eunuch paused at the door. "Remember, my lord, even victorious players may bleed from unseen splinters." When he left, Tyrion unrolled a fresh map of Westeros, pinning tokens. Lion at Harrenhal, flayed man near the neck, wolf in the marshes. He tapped the wolf twice, as though in silent encouragement, then let out a breath he had not realized he held. Robb's vanguard reached Greywater Watch under a veil of pale dawn. The fortress seemed to rise from mist itself. Towers squat, wood-planked, half-floating on barge-like platforms anchored by thick chains. Reed banners fluttered, painted with the black lizard lion of House Reed. Crannogmen blew conch horns in welcome, their calls echoing through fog like distant whale songs. Mira Reed met Robb at the gangplank, spear slung over shoulder. Her green eyes shone with pride mingled with relief. "We feared you would never come, my king," she said. Robb clasped her forearm. "I am no king now, Mira, just Robb of the North, and I come seeking paths no lion can track. Then Greywater is your shield. Come, my father waits." Lord Howland Reed greeted Robb inside a long hall stinking pleasantly of peat smoke and fish stew. He was smaller than rumor, slender as a sapling, yet his presence filled the room. They spoke of hidden causeways that would carry Robb's host to the Fever River, of wraiths said to haunt Moat Cailin's battlements, grizzled ironborn deserters, starving but dangerous. Reed pledged 10 galleys of marsh warriors to sail the Salt Spear and strike ironborn longships harrying Bear Island. In return, he asked only one boon. "When winter passes," Howland said, voice solemn, "remember the sacrifices made in mud and silence. The South forgets our marshfolk bleed too." Robb placed hand over heart. "The North remembers all its children." That night, Greywater's fires lit mist from below, glowing like lanterns adrift in clouds. Robb stood on a deck that rocked ever so slightly, gazing north where unseen snows fell upon Winterfell's wreck. Grey wind pressed close, rumbling. The direwolf's eyes fixed upon the same invisible horizon. and Robb felt a tremor of shared longing, stone walls, hot springs, laughter of siblings chasing on ramparts. He swore silently, "I will not let that memory die." At Moat Cailin, ramparts of black stone reared against slate sky. 3 towers still stood, their bases eaten by centuries of salt wind. Iron-born reefs bobbed beyond the causeway, disgorging half-starved reavers. When Reed's galleys crept under cloud cover, archers picked the first watchmen from parapets with frog-tipped arrows. Robb led the assault up a ramp dredged from swamp, gray wind bounding ahead in eerie silence. The fight that followed was brutal but swift. Ironborn, weakened by hunger and disease, broke beneath northern axes. Yet they fought like madmen, driven by Salt King pride. Robb crossed blades with a captain whose face bore kraken tattoos inked in blood. 2 quick parries, a feint, then Robb's long sword slipped beneath beard to slit the throat. Warm scarlet splashed Robb's bracer. First man he had slain since bending the knee. Anguish warred with grim resolve within him. There would be many more before dawn. By sunrise, the moat ran red where fresh tide met fen water. The quiet pack buried their own atop ramparts, cairns of stone built under hushed prayer. Mira Reed tossed ironborn corpses into bog pools where lurkers waited. In the highest tower, Lord Howland drew Robb to a crumbled window slit. "Look," he said. Columns of smoke rose faint on northern horizon. "Dreadfort forges," Howland guessed. "Bolton prepares." Robb's jaw clenched. "Then we march with haste." He left a garrison of marsh spears at Moat Cailin. This choke point must never fall again, then spurred his host up the King's Road's ragged remainder. Ravens preceded him to every hall. To Deepwood, Bear Island, Carhold, Manderley's White Harbor. Some would answer, some would wait, but each letter ended the same. "The wolf has not forgotten, nor forgiven." In White Harbor's Merman's Court, Lord Wyman Manderley unfolded Robb's raven and sniffed. Salt and peat upon the parchment. "Smells like hope." Though gout bound him to chair, he barked orders for ships. Fat Merman's daughter, lean seafoam, every vessel stout enough to brave frigid seas. Load grain, salted pork, dried cod. "Our king will need full bellies at the Dreadfort's gates." Maester Theomore reminded Wyman that Joffrey held the Stark hostages. The Lord shrugged. "I may choke on claws for this, but better an honorable death than lion's yoke." In Carhold, Lord Arnulf Karstark received the raven with narrowed eyes. His liege, Harrion Karstark, still languished a captive in Red Keep dungeons. Family above all whispered in Arnulf's ears. He burned the letter over a brazier and penned a new scroll to Tywin Lannister. "Wolves gather. I can be your hound within their ranks." Wax melted, sealing treachery. At Bear Island, Lady Meage roared with laughter when the raven arrived. "I knew the cub still had teeth." She ordered her daughters, Lyra and Daisy, to muster every axewife and spearson, loading them onto longships ready to slip between ironborn patrols. "Let's show the flayed men what a bear does to wolves' hunters." And in Winterfell's scorched courtyard, where snow drifted deep into collapsed keeps, the bastard of Bolton, now styling himself Ramsay Snow of Stout Pine, skinned the last living Umber retainer and listened to screams echo off broken walls. Beside him, Lady Barbary Dustin watched with cold smile. Ramsay finished, wiped blade on straw, and turned. "Send riders," he commanded. "Tell father the wolves approach. Let him prepare my wedding feast." "What bride?" Barbary asked. "Why," Ramsay grinned, "the little Stark girl Sansa, of course. And should the lions refuse her hand, I will take the fry girl I hear the old weasel still offers." He inhaled snow-chilled air. "Either will scar nicely." Snow began to fall more heavily as Robb's column neared the bar Rolands. Supply wagons sank into drifts. Men wrapped cloaks tight, breath pluming like hearth smoke. They passed ancient mounds where kings of the first men slept with iron swords upon their laps. The wind there sighed through grass like whispers of warning. On the fourth dusk of snow, scouts brought news. Bolton outriders had crossed the Weeping Water, 30 leagues east, cutting a swath toward Winterfell. Clegane's host remained behind, harrying the barrow keepfasts, but Ramsay's lighter cavalry pressed ahead, burning crofter huts for sport. A map carved in frost appeared before Robb's eyes. If he swung westward, he could circle Ramsay and strike from rear, yet that would leave Moat Cailin vulnerable to Clegane. If he turned to fight Clegane, Ramsay would entrench at Winterfell. At council fire, lords argued until sparks drifted to stars. Lady Mormont barked for decisive hunt. Lord Glover urged caution. Ride for Deepwood first, gather strength. Howland Reed counseled splitting force, using marsh boats to harry both columns. Robb listened, heart heavy. He remembered Theon's betrayal, Winterfell's burning, Bran and Rickon's supposed deaths. He thought of Sansa held in crimson cages. He could not let Winterfell suffer the bastard's cruelty again. "We march on the Dreadfort," Robb declared. "Let Ramsay think himself secure. When Clegane finds Moat Cailin barred, he will flounder in swamps long enough. Glover, Reed, harry the mountain's flanks with every ghost your marsh can raise. Mormont, sail upriver, gather Deepwood's men, cut Ramsay's supply from sea. When we lay siege, Bolton will feel winter's true bite." Approval rumbled, though anxious eyes flickered. Plans set, Robb sought 4 hours' rest. Gray wind curled at his feet beneath pine boughs. Snow muffled sound. The camp seemed swallowed by feather-white hush. In dream, Robb stood before a heart tree whose red leaves bled into snow, and voices of dead kings urged patience, patience. But beneath their chant he sensed another whisper, thin and urgent. "Sister, sister." He woke just before dawn, heart racing. A raven waited on the perch beside his tent. Its message bore Tyrion's cipher. Queen meets with Bolton envoy at Harrenhal on the morrow. They plot to trade Sansa for Frey alliance. Beware the twins. Trust Littlefinger not. Robb crushed the parchment. Sansa's safety had always balanced upon a lion's whim. Now it dangled by a Frey's fickle favor. His plan could not falter. He scribbled reply, hold fast. Keep river signal. Winter will howl. He bound it to Raven's leg, watched it vanish into snow-flecked dawn. Beyond towering Godswood oaks, the armies converged. Bolton banners flapped upon white field. Red flayed man, obscene in fresh-fallen snow. Ramsay's scouts spotted the first ranks of wolf pennants cresting ridge. He licked lips. "At last," he murmured. "The pup comes to save his bitch." He ordered drums sounded. Pale sun glared off rows of pikemen wrapped in flayed skin cloaks. Some carried torches, though it was midday, ready to shower burning pitch. Within their midst, chained dogs bayed, starved for battle. Robb arrayed his own across a ridge studded with frost-stunted birches, mist steaming from nostrils of thousands. He rode before the line, visor lifted so each soldier might see his eyes. He spoke of home, of lost kin, of flayed shame staining northern fields. His words floated on crisp air, carrying into hearts where fear huddled. When he finished, a hush took hold. Then rose a sound like thunder as spear butts slammed shields. Boom, 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 a heartbeat of 1,000 chests. Gray wind answered with a long, savage howl. The battle of shivering pines began with archer volleys, black fletchings streaking white sky. Bolton dogs leaped forward into a hail of shafts, falling with arrows through throats before teeth could close. Ramsay laughed, then signaled his cavalry.
"Fleet man Knichts spurt downhill, Hoves churning snow."
Robb raised his father's sword. Horns brayed. The quiet pack surged. They met where pines shivered under weight of hoarfrost. Steel clanged, horses screamed. Men vanished beneath drifts stained crimson. Robb's personal guard cut a path toward Ramsay, but the bastard danced back, loosing barbed arrows. One shaft grazed Robb's cheek, carving a hot line to jaw. Blood, bright against frost, stung his pride more than flesh. He pressed onward. Elsewhere, Meage Mormont's axewives slammed into Bolton's left, hacking knee tendons, leaving pikemen floundering. Howland Reed's Crannig archers appeared as if rising from snow itself, loosing poison darts at exposed throats. Yet Bolton numbers pressed, edges of Robb's line curling like parchment to flame. Gray wind darted among legs and hooves, hamstringing horses, dragging men screaming into drifts. Ramsay tried to shoot the direwolf. Gray wind dodged, leap snapped, tore quiver from Bastard's back. Ramsay cursed, drew short sword, slashed futilely as fur blurred away. Sun dipped behind iron clouds. Both armies fought in dimming blue light. Trumpets suddenly sounded northwest. Manderly banners emerged, mermaids on sea green, infantry tramping through heaviest snow as though waves parted. Their arrival hammered Bolton morale. Knights faltered. Robb seized moment, ordering center to wedge. He found Ramsay amid chaos, wrestling with a Manderly bannerman whose guts spilled steaming onto snow. Robb charged. Swords met with shriek. Ramsay's grin peeled lips from teeth. He fainted low. Robb parried, riposted, drove Ramsay back over fallen corpses. They circled like wolves over kill. "I'll take your dog's pelt for my cloak," Ramsay hissed. "And I'll take your bastard's head," Robb replied, voice flat. Ramsay darted close, dagger appearing from sleeve. Robb twisted, blade scraping mail links, but Ramsay caught his shoulder pauldron, jerked him forward into knee strike. Robb staggered, vision swimming. Ramsay raised dagger for heart thrust. Then Grey Wind crashed into him, fangs closing on forearm with crunch of bone. Ramsay screamed, dagger spinning away. The dire wolf shook savagely. Blood sprayed like ink on parchment. Robb steadied, sword tip at Ramsay's throat. Bolton's soldiers hesitated, seeing their lord's peril. Snow fell thicker. "Yield," Robb commanded. Ramsay spat foam, eyes wild. "Flay me or lose what can remain," he roared. "My father holds your sister's skin in waiting." His words cut short as Grey Wind clamped teeth over face. Robb barked order too late. A wet snap, and Bastard of Bolton slumped, cheek torn away, breath bubbling. Robb felt no triumph, only cold. He raised sword, shouted, "Bolton men, lay down arms. Stand with the North or die for a dead man's treachery." Some complied. Many fled into trees. Mormont axes cut down those who raised weapons again. Within moments, fields stilled save for moans of wounded. Snow-thick dusk settled. Robb knelt by Ramsay's body, noting life still fluttered weakly. He bound the bastard's wounds, not in mercy, but for justice. "You will stand trial," he said to the unconscious form, "and every man will see the fate of traitors." Word of the battle raced on raven wings. In King's Landing, Tywin Lannister crushed Goblet upon hearing. Bolton heir captured, Bolton host shattered, but mountains stalled in neck swamps. Worse, the North rallied. Cersei uncorked fury, demanding Sansa's immediate marriage to Joffrey lest Stark loyalty waver. Tyrion countered that such haste stank of desperation. Arguments roared through small council hall like wildfire. That night Sansa stood upon Blackwater Quay, heart pounding. Shae kept watch as Sansa uncorked Tyrion's vial, emptied emerald flame into river. A moment later, a bloom of green rolled upon dark water, shimmering. A lone lantern blinked thrice from underneath Blackwater Bridge. Smuggler's signal. Sansa exhaled, pulse racing. Robb would know she still fought beside him. But unseen upon a parapet, Peter Baelish observed the burning river, smile curling thin. "Every flame casts shadow," he whispered. At dawn, Robb's healers tended fallen. Among prisoners he found White Harbor carpenters pressed into Bolton ranks by threats. He freed them. He found 2 Karstark knights who demanded honorable combat rather than accept mercy. He granted trial by arms, defeating each swiftly but sparing lives, ordering them instead to bear witness to justice. To surviving Bolton officers he offered choice: swear anew or march south in shackles. Most knelt pale with fear. Lady Meage pressed for immediate march to Dreadfort, to capture Roose before word spread. But Howland Reed argued weary men would falter in full siege without rest. Robb compromised. Send a fast vanguard, Reed's swamp riders and Mormont bear runners, to encircle, while main host recuperated for 3 days. He summoned a carpenter, bade him craft a simple wooden cage with iron bars salvaged from Bolton wagons. Ramsay Snow, still feverish, was chained within, face swathed in bandages. The cage mounted on wagon, pulled by 2 oxen. Upon its side Robb painted the grey direwolf and wrote in bold strokes, "Traitor." Bolton soldiers marched before it, hands bound. Everywhere the procession passed, through Barrowton, across Sheepshead Hills, small folk emerged weeping, offering bread, salt, broken swords. In each town Robb proclaimed, "The North is free when we stand together. No lion's gold, no flayed man's fear shall rule us." Cheers rose, timid first, then roaring. Songs sprouted, verses half-remembered from war 2 seasons past, now sung anew. On the second resting night, Robb walked alone among barrows. Grey wind kept pace. Moonlight bathed snow in ghostly blue. Robb halted before a mound crowned by ancient weirwood sapling, knelt, palms to earth. "Father," he murmured, "I bent once to save lives. Now I rise to avenge them." Wind stirred branches. A single red leaf drifted, landing upon Robb's gauntlet like a drop of blood. He rose, resolve hard as winter steel. 3 days later, Deepwood Motte gates swung wide to welcome marching host. Galbart Glover embraced Robb, voice thick. "Thought the Starks lost," he admitted. "But wolves hunt best from shadow." He brought tidings. Bear Island longships sank 3 Ironborn raiders last fortnight. Manderley ships docked at White Harbor with grain. And, most astonishing, a raven from Old Town. The Citadel debating dispatch of healers northward, citing new winter plague fears. "Not all the realm forgets who keeps its back," Galbart said. While the host took refreshment, Robb convened war council in Deepwood's Timber Hall. Candles glimmered upon a fresh map. Dreadfort circled, Winterfell ruins marked. Frey forces camped at the Twins. Reports placed Roos's main strength still east, uncertain whether to reinforce Sun or retreat toward Frey's safety. "We strike Dreadfort before Freys can join," Robb resolved. "Burn the flayed banners off its walls. Free any still loyal within. Then we ride for Winterfell and raise her stones again." Some warned of Frey treachery, of hostage fates. Robb's voice grew quiet but firm. "My sister lives in chains because I knelt. She will not stay captive because I rose. Each victory shortens the queen's leash. When winter thickens, the lion will find southern passes buried. We will trade Bolton treachery for Sansa's freedom." And so the quiet pack, no longer quiet, began final march east. Ramsay's cage rattled at Column's center, a grim banner of justice. Clegane still bogged down near Moat Cailin, losing men daily to black-shafted marsh arrows. Tywin's ravens found no perches among trees that devoured squad after squad, roots swallowing armor with silent hunger. Yet Tywin was no man to yield. He redirected troops from Harrenhal, commanded Frey levies to pour west across Green Fork. At the Twins, Walder Frey fretted, calculating which way profit blew. He hosted a Lannister emissary and pocketed golden lions equal to twice Riverrun's worth. Yet he also received a gilded dirk mailed anonymously, its pommel carved into a snarling wolf's head. He slept uneasily thereafter. Winter's first great blizzard descended upon the Dreadfort the night Robb's vanguard took positions. Snow blanketed ramparts, muffling Bolton horn calls. Within, Roose paced torchlit hall, pale eyes emotionless even as servants reported Sun captured. He listened, fingers steepled, then commanded messengers. "Tell Frey, strike Moat Cailin, break the neck. If they fail, I will offer Stark heads to Lannisters myself." But as icy dawn broke, Roose saw siege lines already raised, timber palisades like jagged teeth, snow camo tents dotted beyond bowshot. Battering rams fashioned from old giant-rooted trees loomed, adorned in direwolf cloth. Beyond, gray shapes moved. Mormont bears, Glover spears, reed slingers. And at their head, Robb Stark upon sable stallion, helm crowned with white frost. Trumpets called parley. Roose ascended gatehouse, cloak billowing red on pink. Robb rode forward alone, gray wind pacing. "I hold your son," Robb called. "Alive. I demand your surrender, restoration of Winterfell, and fealty to the north." No kneeling to foreign crown, only return to honor. Choose Lord Bolton. Roos's expression never changed. My son is of little use to me, he said. Flay him if you will. A murmur rippled through Bolton guards. Some shock, some grim acceptance. Robb's eyes hardened. He signaled. 2 soldiers dragged Ramsay's cage into view, swung door wide. The bastard limped forth, half-healed. At a nod, Grey Wind advanced, teeth bared at Ramsay's neck. Roos's thin lips twitched. You dare use mongrel threats?
Nej, Robb riplit.
I offer justice. For every Stark and Umber child flayed. For every girl hunted in your woods. Watch. He raised hand. Archer beside cage knocked arrow. Ramsay shrieked, shielding face. The arrow flew wide, thunking into post. Grey Wind backed. Roos's knuckles whitened on battlement stone. Was it anger? Fear? Hard to read. Robb continued. Surrender, and your son stands trial by northern law. Resist, and he dies here and you next. Bolton men along walls shifted. Some spit over parapet, others considered crossbows. Roos weighed hearts with those strange pale eyes, then spoke. I will answer before my peers, not a boy who knelt to lions. So be it, Robb said. He wheeled horse away. Archers loose. Arrows arced, black against gray sky, rattling shields. Siege drums beat. Snow-shrouded trenches disgorged Northmen with hooked ladders. Ramsay snarled, tried to flee. Grey Wind herded him back toward cage. The siege of the Dreadfort began with storm and wolves' howls. For 3 days snow swirled, filling moats, hiding sappers as they burrowed beneath ancient walls. Bolton men fought with desperation. Some defected, dragging crimson banners down, tossing flayed men's sigils into fires. On 4th night, Reed marshboats navigated frozen moat edges, ferrying silent killers to postern gate.
At predon grei, gatet skeins snapt. Portkulis groa ned upward.
Wolf banners surged. Roose Bolton met Robb in great hall reeking of pitch smoke. Silent, they crossed blades beneath flayed man's standard. Roose fought like shadow, quiet, precise. Yet Robb, fueled by old grief and new fury, matched every blow. When Roose overextended, Robb pivoted, steel sliding into gap beneath armpit mail. Bolton staggered, surprise finally touching his mask-like face. He fell to knees. Mercy, he whispered, not pleading, more like measuring a concept he seldom considered. Robb lowered sword. Mercy is for those who showed it. He turned to a Karstark knight standing among captives. Lord Karstark, your father died believing honor stood above vengeance. Meet justice with northern law. The knight understood. He drew dagger offered to Robb. The young wolf shook head. You're right. The Karstark executed Roose swiftly, blade to throat, blood spilling on rushes. A hush settled, Bolton reign ended. Winterfell's melancholic towers greeted the battered army weeks later. Snow-laden walls cracked by fire still stood in stubborn silhouette. Robb's first sight of them filled his lungs with confluence of sorrow and joy. He led host through shattered gate, hoofbeats muffled by drifts. Grey Wind bounded ahead, vanishing into Godswood. Within broken great hall, weeds poked through flagstones. Yet echoes of feasts lingered, ghost laughter of Bran sliding on battlements, Arya sword dancing with Needle, father's deep voice at head of table. Robb dismounted, removed gloves, knelt. He placed palm flat upon icy stone and bowed head. Behind him, thousands carried torches. They began to clear rubble, re-erect fallen banners, lift new timbers. Glover carpenters set to framing roofs. Manderley masons plotted walls. Meege Mormont directed bear-strong women to hoist beams. In the Godswood, Howland Reed found Heart Tree still standing, tears frozen on bark. He whispered prayers of thanks. That night, Robb held council beneath open sky, no hall yet whole enough. Winterfell must rise, he told assembled lords. A city of refuge where no one kneels to golden crowns. We will forge alliances anew, north with Bear, west with Glover, south with Manderley. We will send envoys to watch the wall, for Jon warns of darkness stirring, and we will claim rightful prisoners." He raised letter newly arrived from King's Landing. Joffrey's seal, words dripping arrogance. "Return the traitorous Bolton and your rebels may keep frozen wastes. Refuse and the girl dies." Robb crumpled parchment. "I will not barter sisters for tyrants' whims," he declared. "We will march south when winter allows, but on our terms." Lady Meege thumped axe haft. "Wolves in summer heat melt. Wolves in winter bite." Cheers rang through ruin. Sparks from campfires drifted skyward like infant stars, and from a balcony blasted by iron-born axes, gray wind lifted head and howled, long, haunting, triumphant. His song rolled over broken turrets, over new-raised scaffolds, over field of tents, into black sky where falling snow turned to diamonds in torch glow. Sansa Stark heard that howl in dream and woke with tears hot upon cheeks. Somewhere beyond red walls and lion guards, her brother lived, claws unsheathed. She rose, smoothing nightdress, and stepped to window. Far off across Blackwater, dawn's first blush painted clouds wolf gray. She pressed fingers to glass. "I'm coming home," she breathed. Behind her, door hinges creaked. Peter Baelish's voice drifted smooth as oil. "Awake so early, my lady? The city slumbers, but plots never sleep." Sansa turned, mask of porcelain composure settling over features. "Neither do I," she said. Baelish smiled. "Good, for dawn heralds change. The Queen intends your relocation to Harrenhal come week's end. Better walls, she says." Fingers brushed lapels. "I could arrange alternative carriage, should you trust me." Trust was a blade Sansa now handled warily. She pictured green fire on water, coated threads in bodice, Robb's direction in every heartbeat. She inclined head slightly. "We will speak of it," she replied. As Baelish withdrew, Sansa returned to window. Sun crested, gilding roofs. Somewhere wolves stirred. And in ice-palaced Winterfell, amid hammer strikes and mortar songs, Robb Stark planned, waiting for deep winter to seal passes and for right moment to unchain vengeance. The wind from Shivering Sea carried laughter one morning as pipes sounded beyond outer gate. Two figures approached. Mira Reed leading shaggy horse bearing tall, gaunt rider in black cloak. Snowflakes dusted his curls. Robb strode to greet them, heart jolting. "Jon," he breathed. Jon Snow dismounted, eyes cloud dark, lines of harsh duty etched around mouth. He clasped Robb's forearm. Ravens scarce reached the wall. "I feared rumor until marshfolk guided me." He looked around ruined courtyard. "You've work yet, and help to welcome," Robb answered. Jon nodded grimly. "The true war marches south of the wall. Wildlings mass behind one who calls himself king beyond the wall. But they flee something worse, dead men walking. We need every blade. And dragon glass." Firelight flickered in Robb's mind. Songs of ancient heroes wielding blades of obsidian. He sighed. "Will the Watch break vows to fight in the south?" "Not break," Jon said. "Defend realm of men wherever the wall of flesh stands. If Starks call, crows will answer." He glanced at northern banners. "But you're still called king to many." Robb exhaled. "King, lord, brother. What matters is we stand together. In God's wood, beneath red leaves heavy with rime." Robb introduced Ramsay, still jailed, to Jon. The bastard of Bolton's eyes rolled whites at sight of Night's Watch cloak. "Brother bastards," he croaked mockingly. Jon regarded him without expression. "Some bastards forge honor as shield, others forge cruelty. This one shall meet justice." Ramsay laughed until cough racked ribs. Weeks passed. Walls rose, granaries filled with gifts from Manderley ships. Karstark envoy arrived seeking clemency, presenting Arnulf's severed head, proof of loyalty regained. Robb accepted, though solemn, instructing them to guard Carhold's coast against Ironborn. Ravens flew to Vale, to Riverrun, uncertain of answers, but hope soared on paper wings. Winter deepened. Snowdrifts swallowed mile markers on King's Road. Tywin withdrew lion forces south, fearing supply lines. Freys barricaded twins, uncertain which side would pay more come spring. The realm froze into uneasy quiet. Into that hush, a lone raven arrived at Winterfell, bearing roll of parchment fine as silk. Sansa's hand, unmistakable, wrote a single line. When the river burns green again, ride. Beneath, Tyrion's sigil, small and cunning. Robb folded note, pulse pounding with promise. Prepare horses, he told Jon. When spring thaw cracks the next ice, we ride south. Wolves will answer wildfire's call. He turned to Grey Wind, scratching fur between ears. Soon, he whispered, moonlight gilded new-mended walls. Beyond, forest shadows stretched deep. Somewhere far south, a young woman stitched another secret map, and a dwarf sharpened wit for war. Lions prowled, Freys schemed, shadows rose beyond the wall. Yet in the heart of winter's night, the north beat with unified rhythm again, thrum of forges echoing wolf drums. And in that relentless cadence Robb Stark found not the broken boy who bent once at enemy throne, but the tempered steel of king. Crownless yet unbowed, sharpened by mercy and fire alike. Winter's jaw had closed around Westeros, but within its gnashing teeth the wolves gathered, patient, ready to bury fangs into the flesh of tyranny when the green flame blossomed upon black waters once more. Snow sheathed the courtyard of Winterfell like polished marble, each flake glimmering under witchfire torches lashed to fresh-planted posts. Carpenters hammered through the night, their saws screeching sparks from pine seasoned in deepwood motte. The noise rolled through the bailey like drums of a distant army, but the castle itself seemed to hum in answer, stone waking after long, abused sleep. On the shattered parapet above the east gate, Robb Stark stood with cloak drawn tight, watching work crews haul another lintel into place. The scent of pitch and pine filled his lungs, mingling with the sharper tang of forge smoke from the smithy where Mickens laid apprentice, halder, shaped nails and spear points. Robb counted the rhythm of hammers, 10 to set one timber, measured how many timbers still waited in stacked sledges, and saw the weeks dwindling with the wood. Soon, winter's fangs would close so hard that no saw, however sharp, could bite the frozen grain. Below, Jon Snow strode across trampled drifts, fresh from the east stables. His black cloak gleamed with rime. Longclaw's wolf's head pommel flashed when it caught torchlight. Ghost padded at his heel, the white direwolf eerily silent beside Grey Wind's darker bulk. The two wolves regarded one another, ears twitching, as though sharing secrets of snow and blood. Robb leaned on the battlement and called, voice low to keep from waking weary sleepers in the hall. Any word? Jon looked up. Tracks in the wolfswood thick and straight. Not game. A column of men, heading south by our estimation. He climbed the stair and joined his brother on the parapet. If they keep the pace, they reach the King's Road in 3 days, then White Knife Ferry in 2 more. Robb exhaled steam. Fry scouts. Could be. Or Bolton stragglers banding to make trouble. The tracks vanished near the Widow's Watch Trail. Snow's too deep to follow without losing daylight. Robb's fingers closed on the rough grit stone. Take 8 of the swiftest rangers. Find them before they find us. But leave word with Maester Vyman. If ravens arrive from Sansa or Tyrion, I must see them at once. Jon knuckled brow, then turned, black cloak snapping in stiff breeze. Once he'd descended, Robb gazed out toward shadowed Godswood, where pale weirwood limbs creaked under the burden of new snow. He imagined the heart tree listening, blood-red leaves trembling to his thoughts. He wondered if Bran, wherever the green dreams had carried him, could hear Winterfell's heart beating again. Behind him boots crunched on fresh crust. Lady Meage Mormont stalked forward clad in patched bearskin. Her cheeks were ruddy from the night's bite. If you plan to keep a watch upon your walls every hour, you'll freeze before the Freys arrive, she growled. Better frozen than heedless, Robb replied, but managed a crooked smile. Is the council ready? In the great hall, Galbart Glover bunks with the masons and thinks that makes him master carpenter. He hounds everyone for timetables. Howland's marshmen emptied half the grain barns into reed sacks to dry. Wyman sent more salt fish than you have cellars for. The north is stirring, Robb Stark. Time you stirred with it. He followed her from the wall and down the spiral stair. Torches quavered in iron brackets, their shadows dancing like long-armed wights across rough stone newly mortared. Robb inhaled warmth of hearth fires as they crossed the yard. 2 children raced past. One of the new smith's twin daggers, the other a Glover cousin, laughing despite the cold. Their laughter knifed pain through Robb's chest. Winter still held joys for those too young to know despair. He prayed it would remain so. Inside the hall, tapestries scavenged from unburned storage hung between cracked columns. Hunting scenes faded by smoke. Anna Stark's wedding ride, a lone white hart beneath winter moon. Lords and ladies crowded trestle benches, mittens off only long enough to grip warm mulled ale. As Robb entered, conversation quieted. He took the high seat, no direwolf crown throne now, only a plank-back chair draped with black bearskin, and gestured. Galbart Glover rose first, snow-speckled beard stiff with frost. "We finished counting spears," he reported. 7,000 under roof, 4,000 more riding from west valleys when their flocks are penned. Manderly ships unload daily at White Harbor grain, smoked eel, even Myrish candles for light. Lord Wyman also sends 60 crossbowmen. Says they bear arms shaped to fit bellies as wide as loyalty. I'd not doubt them. Their quarrels carry spite as far as any arrow. A rumble of amusement greeted that. Robb dipped chin. And timber. Enough to roof the library and granaries before snow deepens further, but rebuilding Great Hall fully will wait until spring, unless we shorten sword blades to use the iron. Glover's grin flashed teeth. I'll not advise that. Lady Meege stood next. Deepwood's longships returned. They sank 2 ironborn raiders off Bear's Claw Cape and captured a 3rd laden with armored reavers bound for Sea Dragon Point. Those prisoners curse Euron Crow's eye for abandoning them. They might be bargained for hostages should Pike stir. Howland Reed spoke from a shadowed corner, voice soft as falling rankwater. Crannig outriders track the mountains remain struggling through frozen neck. Only a few hundred left. The marsh devours their horses. Leeches drain their men. They turn south now, toward the twins, perhaps seeking shelter. Robb twined fingers. Let the swamps keep them. I will not chase shades when living foes remain. Which brings us to Fry. An uneasy murmur rose. Every lord there bore some slight from Walder Fry. An unpaid dowry, a delayed crossing, an insult delivered at feast. Robb waited until it faded. Our scouts place 6,000 Fry levies on the south bank of the Green Fork, fortified by oxhide palisades. Lord Walder hired cell sails to watch the White Knife mouth. Their sloops harass Manderly vessels. They hold the Twins and ford of the Crows. On paper they block every river road to King's Landing. Galbart's eyes gleamed. But rivers freeze. Just so. Robb flattened his gauntlet on the weather-stained map. In 3 weeks, the first crimson route of winter ice will lock the Green Fork shallows. We'll march upstream, cross by night, then turn south along the King's Road. Frey's garrison the Twins. They'll not expect attack from behind while they eye the neck. By dawn we take both towers, sever Tywin's last northern passage, and open route to Riverlands. A hush, broken only by the hiss of pitch-soaked logs. Meege Mormont spat into the fire. Walder will howl. Let him. Robb's voice was low. He hanged 14 Karstark deserters from those gatehouses. Perhaps he'll hang another Fry to match. One of the Karstark captains straightened, expression stiff. Robb caught it. For moons past he'd allowed that man to duel for honor. The wound still bled. He leaned forward. No man here forgets what Fry did at the Trident or the Trident's toll in our first war. But we march for more than vengeance. Sansa's letter signals readiness. Tyrion's spies say wildfire caches beneath King's Landing are rotted, wagons of fresh barrels delayed. The city is hungry. Cersei now rations bread to soldiers only. If we strike before spring, we strike a starving lion. A shiver rippled even among hardened warriors. To march on King's Landing was to step into legend, and into every folly that beggared the realm. Yet they remembered too. The young wolf's first war triumphed until betrayal. The weight of that memory steadied their hearts. A roar shattered the door behind them. Gray wind bounded through, fur bristling, eyes ember bright. He circled the table, growling low in his throat until his snout pointed at the arrow slit left of the hearth. Robb's hand found sword hilt in reflex just as a thunk echoed from timber. Meej darted to slit, ripped curtain aside. An arrow shaft quivered in frame. Its fletching bore crimson wax seal. The flayed man distorted where heat began to melt stamp. Reed retrieved it carefully, snapped head from shaft, delivered parchment to Robb. He unfolded it. Thick ink ran where snow melted into letters. The message was short. Your sister ships for Harrenhal at next full moon. If you would keep her skin, hold your wolves in the north. Kings remember what kneeling means. Queen Regent Cersei. A hush as deep as crypt corridors coated the hall. Even wood crackles seemed blasphemous. Robb read again, searching for cipher marks. None. Cersei wanted this loud and plain. Galbart broke first. A trap. She counts will dash south in blind fury. Reed's lip curled. Message carried by Bolton arrow. Note you. Ominous, but useful. Robb folded parchment. Harrenhal sits in disrepair. Blackwater burned Tyrell siege gear. Its walls gape as rotted teeth. Cersei chooses it so Tywin can send cavalry easily from Riverrun Road. She shows threat, hides weakness. Jon returned at that moment, snow clouding shoulders. One look at Robb's face told enough. He read note, eyes darkening. We cannot let them move her beyond reach. And we won't. Robb met the room. Readying the north will continue. But I ride sooner with a spearpoint host only. 600 riders, fastest wolves in the pack. We take the watchers at Moat Cailin, skirt through Derry lands at night, strike Harrenhal before Tywin's foot unlades their mules. Meej coughed. 600 against a fortress? Even broken, her walls. Walls cannot mount horses, Jon said, and Harrenhal's garrison starves, same as the capital. A swift wolf can slip through cracks. He looked to Robb. I ride with you. As will I, growled Meej. Bear girls stand. Reed inclined head. The neck can supply silent oars. Flat-bottom crannock skiffs can carry 20 men beneath Harrenhal's lake gate, if its chains remain rusted. Glover rapped knuckles upon table. Then choose riders. The rest of us gather at Twins to catch Lion's Tail as planned. Robb nodded. We leave 12 days hence. Until then, every spare pot of pitch we can render will march with us. Wolves have teeth of flame too. He lifted parchment, let it curl back. Cersei chose terror as letter. We'll send reply written in courage. The council dissolved into motion, benches scraping ice-dusted flagstones. Robb lingered, eyes on hearth where bolts of pine spat blue sparks. His thoughts walked corridors of Harrenhal's melted towers, imagining Sansa alone in cold stone, Baelish's shadow upon her path, Joffrey's distant threats curling like smoke from King's mouth. He tasted iron on tongue, and for a heartbeat felt the warm drip of Ned Stark's blood again. The memory steadied him, as if the sword had cleaved doubt instead of flesh. He sensed presence at shoulder, Howland Reed. The small lord stared into flames, voice barely above whisper. When you strike, trust not only steel. Ancient powers linger in those ruins. Ashes of Heron the Black, whispers of children of the forest. They speak to hearts that listen. Reed's moss-green eyes glowed. Carry a heart tree's blessing. Let the old gods guide shadow paths. Robb inclined head. I will kneel in Godswood before we ride. Reed smiled thinly. Then perhaps the winds will carry you unseen. That night, clouds broke open. A pale gibbous moon silvered the courtyard as workers doused torches. Robb walked alone into Godswood, cloak trailing moonlit dust. Snow clung to his boots. Gray wind patted ahead, breath pluming in white huffs. Beneath the heart tree's red canopy, he narrowed eyes at carved face, tears frozen along cheeks. He knelt, drawing steel. The blade reflected candle-slit moon, bright and merciless. I bent once, he told the tree, voice raw. To save lives I knelt. Now I rise, to free them. Wind answered, rustling red leaves like 1,000 sighs. Somewhere far away, a raven croaked. Robb cut his palm, let blood drip onto snow at roots. Guide me, he whispered, for father, for sisters, for north. Gray wind threw back head and howled, cry echoing through dead branches like horns of ancient kings. 2 days later, ravens winged from Winterfell to every holdfast, carved wax seal of dire wolf and flame. The letters warned of Fry treachery, called for carts laden with stone quarried thin as slate, easy to shape into mantlets, for lamp oil, for chain lengths enough to bind 10 oxen in line. The wolves armed for fire. Jon spent those days drilling the 600 chosen. Men of House Mormont, Glover, Reed, Serwyn, Umbers too young to beard yet old enough to cleave shield. They practiced wedge formations in the courtyard slick with packed snow, horses snorting plumes as stable grooms spread ashes for footing. Robb rode the line with helm off, nodding as spears dipped in salute. Each face mirrored hope and dread intertwined, and something fiercer, belief. When training ended, Jon found Robb beside the new forge, rolling a whetstone along the edge of his father's greatsword. They're ready, Jon said. Not yet, Robb replied, flipping the blade. But enough, he glanced sideways. How fares the Ravenry? Windfinger's brood numbers half again what we lost in the sack. Vyman says 3 more hatching by week's end. Jon leaned on fence rail and watched sparks crack from the forge. You trust Tyrion's word? As much as I trust a lion among ravens, Robb admitted. But he freed me once already in court. He saved Sansa from Joffrey's worst. He plays his own game. If our board aligns, I'll take the move. Jon pursed lips. And if his game changes, then I adjust. Robb sheathed sword. Pieces shift, but the wolf's aim remains. Bring Sansa home. Topple the throne that bleeds the north. That evening, Jon dined with Night's Watch Rangers quartered in East Barracks. They spoke of new wildling campfires glimpsed from top of the wall, of an icy feeling seeping from haunted forest each night. Dead things in the woods, whispered a rangy recruit named Locke. Tracks with no feet that made them. Snow trailing black rot. Jon's jaw tightened. Beyond all wars of lords and kings lay an enemy none in the south heeded. After meal, he walked to Maester's rookery, parchment in hand. He penned warning to Sam at Castle Black. King's Landing soon in chaos. Send south every scroll of dragonglass sources. We ride to rescue north and south alike. He sealed it with glob of black wax. Pressed Night's Watch seal ring Tyrion once gifted him. Tiny snowflake offset by crow silhouette. He watched Raven depart, a dark speck swallowed by moonlit sky. 12 dawns later, the Spearpoint host assembled outside Winterfell's gates. Sun rose dull red behind cloud, painting banners ember deep. The leaping trout of Tully, the black bear of Mormont, the reeds of Crannogmen, and above all the gray direwolf. Robb swung into saddle, snow crunching under hoof. Across the yard, Oldnan wept silently, clutching a carved wooden wolf new whittled by carpenter's son. She pressed it into Robb's hand, gnarled fingers shaking. For luck, M-Lord, she murmured. Robb kissed her brow and tucked carving beneath cloak. Horn blasts rolled across the valley, one long, two short. The gates yawned. 600 horses clattered over drawbridge, hooves sparking on iron-shod boards. Behind them, the great gate boomed shut, Winterfell closing like a stone heart. But hope marched south upon swift feet. They rode first to Barrowton, then angled east, following secret Crannog trails invisible beneath snow. Howland Reed led vanguard. His marshmen used staves to test frozen bogs, singing low thrum songs that guided riders through safe paths. On third night, wind howled fierce, driving needles of snow into any gap in cloak. They camped in ruins of an old First Men watchtower, stones crusted with hoarfrost. Jon shared a skin of sisters al brandy with Robb, warmth seeping into bones. Remember when Theon boasted he'd hunt boar here come spring and mount head on Maester Lewin's rookery? Jon said, Robb smiled ruefully. Memories of betrayal still stung, but now felt distant, overshadowed by greater tragedies. As they spoke, Spy returned, Crannig youth with reed darts. He knelt. Fry outriders 5 leagues ahead. Small camp, 24. They watch forward. Robb nodded. Nightfall we bypass.
No clash.
The spy hesitated. But they've captive little girl, northern accent. Crying. Robb's jaw flexed. Outnumbering odds or not, he could not ignore hostage. We take them quietly. Reed darts first, silence camp. Free the girl. Strategic caution ward with Stark honor. Honor 1. Jon volunteered for assault. Under new moon they crept along riverbank. Jon, 7 Crannig men, 2 Mormont women. Reed's darts whispered through cold air. Sentries collapsed, throats pierced. Jon slid into tent, long claw sheathed for stealth. Inside, 3 Fry men gamed with bone dice. 1 reached for horn. Jon smashed pommel into jaw, then clubbed another unconscious. The last fumbled dagger. Mormont axe handle cracked skull before blade cleared sheath. Robb entered after. The captive girl sat bound to cartwheel, cheeks blue with cold. She whispered mother's name. Robb cut cords, wrapped cloak around her. Who are you? Alice of House Reed, she murmured, Howland's barrow cousin, stolen from a ferry raid. Tears welled. When Father Reed saw her safe that dawn, he knelt to Robb. The swamps owe more than oath, he said. Robb shook head. Oaths keep themselves when we keep each other. They pressed on. 5 more days of icy travel delivera. Dee them to banks of the Green Fork upstream of the Twins. Ice plates jostled, thick as war shields, moaning where current gnawed edges. Reed guides tested with or poles. Robb ordered planks laid, 2 wide, across jammed flows. Horses crossed single file. Riders led on foot. The river groaned, cracked, but held. 30 men slipped. None lost. Though 1 packhorse vanished beneath grinding flows, cargo of oil casks bobbing until caught downstream. Night wind whipped as they regained South Bank. The Twins loomed ghost dark upriver, torchlights faint. Robb's column skirted low hills, avoiding silhouette against stars. Before dawn they reached ridge above Fry camp. Fires dotted snow like dying embers. Sentries huddled under firs, backs to north wind.
Robb signaled halt.
A plan of misdirection would waste hours. Speed demanded bite. He turned to Meech. Once horns sound, smash the gatehouse. Jon, take right flank, ride through corral and cut ropes. Reed men slip inside tower stair. We take banners by sunrise or we die hungry. Gray winds growl echoed agreement. They descended like avalanche. Horns only blared after ladders set, when Fry sentries screamed. Arrows and stones rained, but snow-gummed bowstrings hindered aim. Mormont axes hewed door beams. Jon's wedge crashed paddock fences. Panicked Fry horses stampeded through camp, scattering men half-dressed, swords undone. Robb led charge across drawbridge. Gray wind leapt first, dragging guard from parapet. Inside tower, Reed's poison darts felled archers before they cocked crossbows. By breaking dawn, Fry banner slumped from rampart, replaced by direwolf. Walder's grandson, Ser Hosteen, knelt stripped of armor in courtyard, nose bloodied. Robb accepted surrender, offered parole terms, open river, no toll. Send riders to White Harbor bearing proof. Lord Walder's oath renewed. Break word, and the North will break you. Hosteen spat tooth and swore by 7 and drowned gods alike. They buried their fallen. 11 wolves, names carved on pine boards planted in frozen earth. Robb read each aloud, voice cracking only once. Snow swallowed tears. That evening, message raven arrived, eagle feather tied to leg. Tyrion's cipher. Queen marches tomorrow. Harrenhal escort 500, led by Hound. Wildfire depot still thin. My brother rides to intercept you with parley. Approach by storm drains, 3rd hour past moonrise. Bell tower unmanned. Signed simply Halfman. Robb gathered captains. 500 inside, he said, tapping Harrenhal sketch on hide. The Hound will expect anything but shadows and drains. Reed's skiffs can deliver 2 score silently. Jon leads infiltration, unbar Lake Gate. Meej with half-riders flanks west wall, draw garrison. I ride with remaining into main yard when gate lifts. Too few, someone muttered. Enough, Robb insisted. Speed is armor. He looked at Jon. Free Sansa. Get her beyond walls. If neithing fails, light the tower with green flame. The sign to withdraw and burn bridges behind. Jon met his eyes. And you? I hold yard till she passes. Robb's tone allowed no dissent. They clasped forearms. 2 halves of an oath bigger than them both. From twins, they rode south under storm-thick sky, horses' breath ghosts in air. Each mile 8 supplies. They foraged little, trusting speed. On second night, riders glimpsed Golden Lion scouts but slipped beyond. On fourth, they skirted ruins of Derry, charred bones of barns, chickens frozen midstrut where winter flash froze plundered homesteads. By sixth dawn, they reached God's Eye shore. Harrenhal's black towers stabbed sky like burnt fingers. Sooty wind gusted, carrying stench of damp char lakeshore iced along shallows. Farther out, the glassy water mirrored angry clouds. Reed's skiffs waited, hulls camouflaged with muck and reed mats. Jon crouched at bow of lead craft, Ghost crouched silent behind. The wolves parted from Robb with no words. Only clasp, the memory of childhood snowball wars flickering between them. Skiffs slid into night. Robb returned to the riders hidden in Twisted Apple Orchard. He paced, counting heartbeats. Each cratered moment stretched like drawn sinew. An hour passed, too. Then faint torch glow flickered inside west wall parapet. 3 blinks, the signal. Robb mounted, raised sword. They galloped, hooves muffled by snow-strewn road. At outer palisade, Meej's bare banners clashed with sentries already alarmed. Screams rent night. Crossbow bolts hissed past Robb's helm as he thundered through half-raised portcullis. Gray wind bounded ahead, streak of smoke. Main yard erupted in chaos. Stable boys dodged as horsemen flooded. The Hound emerged, helm off, burned face glistening wet. He roared challenge, greatsword swinging. Robb met him steel to steel amid swirling snowflakes glowing orange under torchlight. Each blow rang like Smith's anvil, sparks spitting. Clegane's sheer power drove Robb back step by step, but youth and speed answered force. They circled dead horse carcass, breath fogging, until clang of portcullis chain sounded. Lake gate opening. Jon's infiltration had succeeded. Clegane glanced, moment of distraction. Robb feinted high, cut low, scored thigh. The Hound cursed, staggered. Torches flared as Mormont axewomen barreled in. Robb disengaged, whistled. Gray wind lunged, knocking sword from Clegane's hand. The burned knight backed away growling, hand raised. Enough, I yield. Take your bitch and be gone. Robb hesitated, honor warred with vengeance. Then he nodded. Throw down arms. Gather men in inner yard. Any who lifts blade dies. Clegane limped away, barking orders. Beyond, Jon appeared, Sansa clinging to his arm, cloak mud-spattered. Her face, pale and determined, broke into tremulous smile when she saw Robb atop horse. Tears tracked cheeks as she ran. Robb swung down, caught her, crushed her in snow-dusted embrace. Words failed. They shared quiet broken only by gray wind's whine of relief. Overhead a bell toll sounded, alarum from East Tower. Tywin's outriders must have sighted torchlight. Robb released Sansa, handed reins to Reed's scout. Ride with Jon south shore, then Crannog path north. I'll hold gate. Sansa grasped his hand. Don't die, she whispered. He squeezed back, then slapped horse rump. They vanished under arch. Robb turned to yard. Mormont and Cerwyn lines held against pockets of resistance. Pitch barrels rolled from wagons, smashed, leaked black slick. Robb mounted again, raised torch. Fall back, he shouted. Reed horn will sound. A mournful reed note drifted across yard.
Ryder spilled for gate.
Meej lit a fuse, lobbed into granary stacked with Lannister powder kegs. She galloped after Robb. Explosive roar split air. Flames gout green as wildfire ignited stores hidden since Maegor's reign. Towers burned witch flame, licking clouds. Robb's cavalry burst through open main gate, raced over drawbridge as ropes snapped behind. Snow hissed, turning steam. From ridge, Robb reined to watch Harrenhal's blackened spires glow sickly emerald, as though the castle wore ghastly crown. He prayed any innocent within found escape. Gods would weigh hearts. He turned, whistled. Gray wind loped aside. They spurred toward Lake Track. Jon's column waited by Twisted Willow 20 furlongs south. Sansa wrapped in fur, cheeks rosy from cold ride. She saw the blaze behind. Was anyone enough to slow pursuers? Robb said quietly. He dismounted, pressed brow to hers. We go home. A snow-ridden owl hooted. Horns answered distant. Tywin's scouts. Reed skiffs waited at waterline. They pushed off as dawn rimmed clouds crimson. Across lake, Harrenhal smoldered green. The reflection flickered on frosted water like serpent flame. Sansa huddled between Robb and Jon. She drew free, pulled from cloak a scrap of crimson silk. Cersei's old seal she'd ripped in hidden defiance. She dropped it into water. It bobbed, then sank beneath ripples. Queen's threat drowned, she said. Robb smiled faint, but war's tide still climbed. They'd won sister's freedom, burned lion's paw, yet now Tywin would roar north or south, and fry debts bled. The Spearpoint host must rejoin main army. As skiffs reached reed-shadowed shore, Robb looked north where gray morning light broke over riverlands. Beyond lay the twins secured beneath Dire Wolf, and further Winterfell's rising walls. He looked south where clouds blackened, approaching storm of Lannister wrath, but also perhaps new dawn of realm freed from golden chains. He sheathed his sword, the leather grip slick with frost and blood. Home first, then south again, he murmured, voice carried across still water. Jon answered, eyes like dusk over wall. And beyond. Together, wolves and recovered cub turned faces into wind, ready to carve next path through deepening snow and deeper treachery. And above branchline, ravens circled, their croaks echoing a name old gods might yet remember when crowns rust and lions fall. Stark. The snow that dusted the god's eye that dawn hardened into an icy crust by mid-morning, making the shoreline groan beneath every tread of hoof and boot. Jon Snow led the vanguard up the narrow fisher's track, ghost padding ahead, nostrils flaring at every unfamiliar scent. Behind him rode Sansa, wrapped in a gray direwolf fur cloak too large for her thin shoulders. She had not spoken since they fled Harrenhal's black gates, not after the first look back at the emerald flames that clawed the sky, yet Jon felt her certainty in the strength of her grip around his waist. She held on as if no wall of steel or stone would part them ever again. Robb's column followed at a short remove, melting into the winter-cracked reeds. Howland Reed guided them along water-veined paths only crannogmen could sense. Strips of half-frozen mud no wider than a courser's ribs, kept afloat by rafts of ancient roots. The lake murmured under the weight of 600 weary horses, but the paths held. When the last riders reached firmer ground beneath skeletal birches, Robb signaled halt. He dismounted beside Jon, and together they lifted Sansa from the saddle. She swayed a moment, blue eyes wide at the silence of the marsh. The only sounds were the wolves' soft whines and the creak of frozen cattails. At last she spoke, voice just above a whisper. I smell pine, not smoke. Robb smiled. No smoke here, little dove. Only homeward wind. Tears shimmered unshed, but she blinked them away. Then let's not linger. They pressed north. 2 days passed beneath a sky the color of hammered iron. Scouts reported Tywin's outriders massing along the Pink Maiden Road, but the lion host hesitated. Snow-choked passes slowed supply, and Harrenhal's wild green beacon had thrown their orders into confusion. Small folk whispered of sorcery, of the old castle cursed anew by wolf spirits. The tales stole into every Lannister camp, and more than one sellsword slipped away during the night. On the third morning, the north answered Harrenhal with a howl of its own. Maester Vyman's raven found them in a thicket of black pine. Deep snows cripple Fry. Manderley's fleet breaks blockade. Winterfell's walls stand strong. The north rallies. The parchment hung from Robb's hand like a holy writ. He read it thrice, then passed it to Sansa. She traced each rune as if committing them to flesh and bone. They marched harder after that. Reed's marsh ponies forged ahead, cutting paths through river ice no outsider would deem passable. Crannog rafts carried weaker mounts, while Howland's men erected reed huts every night, so light a child might lift them, yet warm with peat smoke braziers. Sansa slept in the largest, ghost curled at her feet, gray wind prowling the ring of tents. In dreams she heard the heart trees calling her name, their red leaves rustling like skirts in a ballroom. She woke each dawn cold, but steadier. Jon drifted between roles. The Night's Watch ranger forever alert to cracks in darkness, and the lost son returning to half-remembered roads. At campfires he spoke little, save to Sansa when she asked after the wall. She listened in quiet awe as he told of the cold dead walking, of giants in shadow, of a horn blast in the night whose echo he still felt in his bones. The realm quarrels beneath banners, he whispered once. But in the far north, the dead need no heraldry. Sansa shivered and glanced at the stars, veiled, as always, by clouds. 7 days from the lake, they left the marsh behind and rode into the Barrowlands. Wind swept across snow-capped barrows, carrying distant wolf calls. Here the columns grew. Glover outriders from Deepwood joined on the western ridge, hoisting wolf banners so tattered they seemed ghosts of cloth. From the east came Serwyn spears, boots still singed from beating iron-born raiders back into the sea. Every new contingent knelt to Sansa as she passed, murmuring "My lady," with reverence that made her flush. That night, the makeshift host camped beneath an ancient weirwood perched atop a barrow mound. Its gnarled white roots cracked the stone like skeletal fingers reaching for the world above. Robb ordered a ring of torches planted around the tree, more honor guard than defense, and bade Howland Reed lead the rites. The Crannog lord bowed before the carved face and sang low in the old tongue, words so guttural they felt older than ice. One by one, captains laid tokens of the fallen at the roots. Karstark brooches, Mormont bear claws, reed darts, a single black feather from a man of the watch who had perished at Harrenhal's wall. Sansa stepped forward last and placed a strip of crimson silk, the piece of Cersei's seal she had drowned, upon the snow. The white bark drank the color like spilled blood. After the rites, Jon found Robb sharpening ice-rimmed horseshoes near the supply trench. "Scouts report fires at the Twins," he said. "Fry keeps half his men penned behind walls, the other half stuck on the south shore. But ravens flew east 2 nights running, maybe to Tywin, maybe to Stony September. We can't be sure." Robb wiped the rasp on fur. "We march at dawn. If Walder means treachery, we'll answer before his letters do." Jon hesitated. "And after the phrase?" "South," Robb said, eyes flint. "But not for King's Landing yet. Tywin holds Riverrun hostage, and the Blackfish's banners bleed. We free Riverrun, shatter Lion's supply, then turn for the capital once the snows lighten. If half the tales are true, Cersei hoards grain like jewels. Famine will do half our work." "Half," Jon echoed. "The other half?" Robb sheathed dagger. "Steel and fire, and faith." Jon nodded, but his mind wandered to darker northern horizons, the pale blue fire behind dead men's eyes. Fry skirmishers appeared on the 12th day, arrows hissing from a copse of ash. They struck down 2 Glover men and vanished before Reed's darts found them. Hours later, a rider approached under flag of truce. Stout, scar-jawed Ser Emyn Fry, come to parley. Robb received him in a narrow dale, gray wind close, Jon looming behind.
Ser Emyn dismounted stiffly.
"My grandsire, Lord Walder, offers guest right if your grace will sup at his high table tonight." Robb arched a brow. Guest right from a man who once drowned it in blood? Sansa's fingers tightened on reins, remembering her mother's fate in another life. "I think not."
Ser Emyn flashed.
"We are all men of honor if honor is shown." "Then show it now," Robb said. Withdraw your men from the crossing. My host passes north.
Notoi, no quarrel.
We march to defend our lands, not bleed them on your bridges. My lord will require surety, hostages. Robb stepped forward. Grey Wind matched him. Look at my host, sir. Do you fancy riding against the Mormont's axes? Against crannogmen you can't see? Against Northmen who have reclaimed flayed men's hides for cloaks? Tell Lord Walder. Grant passage or see his towers crumble. Raven me your choice by moonrise.
Sere monesti fened.
He will not yield. Perhaps, Robb said softly. Then he will break. He turned away. Crannog archers escorted the fry back under watchful eyes. The parley had taken minutes. Its consequence would span generations. At dusk, before moonrise, a single quarrel whistled from the southern bank, striking a Serwyn sentry dead where he stood. Robb watched without expression as horns stirred across the river. Fry banners fluttered atop both towers.
Va drams echot.
Walder Fry had answered. The Battle of the Frozen Twins began hours before dawn beneath a sky split by winter lightning. Robb's siege engineers, Manderley Portrights turned rope masters, dragged 2 trebuchets within bow range under cover of darkness. Their frames groaned like old barges as they swung stone barrels packed with storm-soaked pitch. The first barrage crashed into the wooden upper rooms of the East Tower and burst in a pyre that lit the river ice gold. Fry crossbows retaliated, but their bolts snapped on frozen shields. Meanwhile, Howland Reed's marsh flotilla slid through reeds upstream, punting silently toward the underarch of the western span. Crannogmen in eelskin suits swam beneath the ice shelf, chiseling silently around keel beams. They packed boar bladders of bear grease under joints, then set floating torches to drift downstream. When the grease caught, columns of white-hot flame licked the piers from below. Fry sentries screamed as ice cracked like thunder, plunging first support beams into black river water. Onshore, Lady Meege Mormont led a feint against the southern palisades, driving 20 longships worth of bear warriors into a seemingly impossible charge across the ice. The bears roared battle hymns, shields hammered to rhythm, axes raised high. Fry archers loosed a storm of quarrels, but the bears wore layer on layer of boiled leather and luck. They reached the wall, hacked at stakes, then, on signal, fell back just as Robb's second trebuchet lobbed barrels of green-tinged pitch over their heads. The mix detonated against the palisade, showering the walkway in sickly fire that burned even on snow. The bears retreated through gouts of flame, laughing like madwomen. With Fry eyes fixed on infernos, Jon Snow led the real assault. 200 spears and 50 knights watch volunteers, men released from vows for dire service, had crept through cattails to the base of the partially burned East Tower. A grapnel word, catching on charred timber. Jon was first up, climbing rope ladder as embers drifted like fireflies. Ghost leapt after, white hide seeming to swallow sparks. Atop the wall walk, Jon cut down the first gate sergeant, booted the next into river darkness. Ghost ripped a crossbowman's throat, crimson steam rising. Within minutes, the East Tower gatehouse fell. Jon's men hauled the winch, raising the inner portcullis. Horns blew thrice, the signal. Robb spurred his horse across the groaning river ice, leading a wedge of Glover lancers. Grey Wind sprinted beside them, hackles bristling. Crannogmen, who had scurried forward laying planks across thinnest spots, guided hooves to safe paths. The wedge burst through the gatehouse into the lower bailey. Fry pikemen rallied, but Manderley crossbows raked them from the walls above. Inside the keep, Ser Hosteen Fry rallied what knights he could. In the timber-roofed Great Hall, the elder Fry sons drew steel before their grandfather's dais. Walder Fry, wrapped in furs, watched with watery eyes. "So the pups bite," he wheezed. "Bite too deep, drown in red." Out in the yard, Robb dismounted and carved through 2 halberds. Meege's bears crashed through the opposite door, battle chanting. Jon emerged from the stair, dirk wet with blood. Soon the hall was a vortex of flashing iron and screams.
Sansa remendou.
Sighed, guarded by reed spears, yet she could hear each crash of shield like drumbeats of fate. It ended when Grey Wind leapt the dais and clamped jaws around Ser Hastine's sword arm, wrenching steel free. Robb vaulted steps, blade level with Walder's throat. The old man raised a trembling hand. "Guessed right," he croaked. "You violate. Guessed right died with my mother in another world," Robb snarled. Then he inhaled mastering fury. "But I come not for slaughter. Winter needs bridges. Yield and live." Walder spat yellow phlegm, but knives of his own kin now pressed at his back. Grandsons weary of a patriarch's whims. Black Walder flung sword down first. Others followed. The old lord slumped. "The twins bend the knee," he muttered. Robb turned to assembled knights. "You swear to hold these crossings for the North alone. No more tolls. No more betrayals." Steel rang on stone as blades were laid down. That same hour, Howland Reed's swimmers finished their sabotage. At dawn, the western tower slid partly into the river, timbers shrieking. Robb spared the eastern structure, symbol of concession. The shattered half became warning to any who might barter with lions again. Sansa entered the soot-smelling great hall at midsun, stepping over broken shields to stand before Walder Frey. The old man's gaze flicked up, sharp. "The wolf maid," he rasped. "You look your mother's fury." Sansa met his eyes. "My mother's fury was swift. Pray mine is slow." Walder paled. Robb motioned to guards. They escorted the lord to his tower chambers, there to linger under watch. By nightfall, the twins' kitchens roasted boar on spits to feed hungry victors. Northmen drank cautious toasts. Frey servants refilled horns with mead, uncertain of their fate. Jon sat beside Sansa at the high table, Robb absent, conferring with scouts. She picked at stew, then turned to Jon. "I dreamt of Bran," she whispered. "He was a white raven leading me through a field of graves. He said, 'Winter is not what you remember. It has grown teeth.'" Jon's spoon paused. "Bran sees farther than we do." Sansa nodded toward open window where snow whirled. "Do you believe we can reach King's Landing? That the realm can be saved?" Jon followed her stare. "It must, but we may need more than swords." He hesitated. "There is another path. Dragons." Her brow knit. "Dragons." "When I served at Eastwatch, sailors whispered of Daenerys Targaryen in the east, 3 dragons grown large as war horses. I thought them tales. But now, north of the wall walks death in ice. To fight ice, fire may be answer." Sansa shuddered. "Queens with fire and kings with blades. Where do the people fit?" "We try to keep them alive," Jon said simply. She reached for his hand, squeezed. Across the hall, reed horns sounded arrival of scouts. Robb strode through smoky glow, face hard. Tywin marches from Riverrun. 20,000, heavy horse in front. He means to retake the twins before spring. The murmurs fell silent. Robb climbed dais, voice carrying. "We do not seek this fight, but it comes. We hold crossings. We send ravens to the Vale, to White Harbor, to every village that names wolf in its songs. Let Tywin come. The North stands ready." He raised his cup. "To winter and the breaking of chains." Horns answered, then cheers. Sansa watched her brother command men as father once had. Pride mingled with dread. The days that followed blurred into preparations. Engineers rebraced the intact East Tower with greenwood logs, drove iron-tipped stakes into the river to deter barges. Crannogmen wove weed mats to hide rockfall traps beneath the ice. Manderley cooks stockpiled barrels of pickled cod. Serwyn Coopers forged iron hoops for shield wall gates. Roose Bolton's surviving loyalists, under watch, laid fresh shingles and quietly joined night patrols, eager to atone. Sansa spent mornings with Maester Vyman in a hastily cleared solar reviewing ravens. Missives flew from White Harbor, Wyman promising 3 more fat trading cogs crammed with rye and river wine. From Bear Island, Lyra Mormont boasting she'd slain 2 Ironborn captains and was sailing east to Harry Lannister grain barges near Maidenpool. From the Eyrie, Lord Robin's tottering signature beneath a note penned by Lady Waynwood offering food and faith, though no knights yet. A single scrap, and signed, bore only a Mockingjay stamp, Baelish's sigil. The words, "Ice can be carved if you wield fire." She burned it unread. Afternoons she walked ramparts with Jon, learning each bastion's line of sight, each murder hole's range. She no longer felt a court lady. Winter had made her soldier. One evening, Robb found her alone on parapet gazing south. "Thinking of King's Landing?" he asked. "Thinking of all the people trapped between crowns," she replied. "Children I saw starve in Flea Bottom. They'll freeze before we reach them." He rested gloved hands on cold stone. "That is why we must cut Tywin here. If we drive him back, his wagons of hoarded grain will feed riverlands again." Sansa nodded, but her eyes remained distant. "And Joffrey? He hides behind walls. We'll face him when the snow's thin." Robb exhaled. "When father spoke of ruling, he said duty was a blade with no hilt. You grasp it and bleed. I feel that bleed every morning." Sansa touched his hand. "Then bleed knowing you hold it well." He smiled sadly. "Sleep, little sister. Tomorrow we ride east for Riverrun. Harry Tywin's flank, draw him off." She did not argue. In her chamber she lay between wool blankets, listening to winter wind moan through arrow slits. Dreams took her. Bran again, standing atop a wall of swirling snow. Wolves circled below. Above, 3 dragons wheeled, one black, one green, one cream. Bran reached out. A dragon stooped, wings blotting moon. Yet its breath warmed Sansa like summer. She woke with tears of wonder on cheeks. Dawn brought war banners on horizon, red gold lions marching across frozen heather. Tywin had moved faster than ravens claimed. His vanguard, led by Ser Kevan, reached South Bank opposite the half-ruined Western Tower before Robb could ride east. Trumpets blared. Across icy span, Lannister camp unfurled like spilled blood, pavilions of crimson, spear points glittering. From the eastern tower, Robb observed through Maester's glass. 15, maybe 18,000, he estimated. More to come. His captains shifted uneasily. At mid-morning, Ser Kevan approached the river edge under Peace Banner. He shouted offer, "Yield crossing, return Frye Lord, deliver the direwolf pup Sansa Stark. In exchange, King Joffrey grants you land south of Neck, free passage north." Robb stepped onto parapet. His voice carried clear. "We decline. Turn south or break upon our walls." Kevin's gaze hardened. "The lion does not break for pups." Robb smiled like new ice, then drown like one. He motioned to Reed archers. They released a single volley in warning, shafts clattering harmlessly at river's halfway mark. Kevan withdrew. Tywin's camp went to work, building raised causeways of timber over safer ice, dragging scorpions into position, deploying siege engineers with wattle barricades. But the lions had underestimated the winter river's hunger. Crannogmen, unseen beneath reed mats, hacked at ice below every new beam, dropping them into water as quickly as laid. Manderly sappers lobbed tar pots night after night, weakening planks. Each dawn revealed fresh, shattered spans, forcing Lannister builders to start anew. On the 4th night, Tywin tried brute force. Heavy infantry marched directly onto ice and shield wall, drummers pounding. Crannog swimmers, guided by weeping willow torches, set fire to undercover grease traps. The ice fractured. Hundreds of lion soldiers plunged screaming into blackness, armor dragging them under before ropes could reach. The survivors clawed back, faces blue with cold. Tywin watched from a new-erected siege tower, jaw granite. "Very well," he said to Ser Island Payne. "We starve them instead." The lions ringed their camp in trenches, raised ovens from wagon stone. They seized every hamlet within a day's ride, slaughtered livestock too weak to herd, and stockpiled grain. Riverlander smallfolk fled to Robb's side, telling of barns aflame, and of mountain men returned, lesser cousins wearing Gregor's sigil, terrorizing for sport. Robb dispatched Meege Mormont with bear cavalry to harry enemy wagons. Jon to lead knights watched scouts deep into lion lines at night, cutting picket ropes and vanishing like mist. For every wagon Tywin captured, 2 burned. Yet winter gnawed on wolves too. Supplies thinned, and frostbite claimed toes and fingers. Maester Vyman rationed oat bread to half rations. Horses grew gaunt. 5 weeks standoff chiseled both armies into hunger ghosts. Ravens brought worse tidings. A plague of cough and belly fever in King's Landing claimed hundreds daily. Queen Cersei rationed wine now, sparking riots. But still Tywin would not retreat. "He wagers we break first," Robb muttered at council. "He forgets we are made of winter." Still, patience could not fill bellies. That night, Robb studied maps by dim taper while snow rattled shutters. Sansa entered quietly. "Let me help," she said. He looked up, brow furrowed. "I've studied store ledgers," she explained. "The castle survives another month if daily grain reduced again." Children accepted. Robb exhaled. "You'd ask men to eat less?" "I'd ask them to live," she answered. "But more, let me ride to Riverrun. If we break siege there, we free river grain to run north. Blackfish's scouts know secret trails along Red Fork. Tywin cannot guard them all." Robb hesitated. "Too dangerous." "You risked all for me," she said softly. "Let me risk for them." In the glow, Robb saw not the frightened sister of King's Landing but a woman tempered by loss. He nodded slowly. "You ride with Jon's Rangers at dusk. Wear dark leathers. If caught, I won't be." She squeezed his arm. "A Stark moves quiet as snow." At dusk, Jon and Sansa slipped from the east postern with 24 Rangers in black, ghosting east into whirling flakes. Ghost and gray wind shadowed them until Reed Marsh swallowed tracks, then turned back. Robb stood on rampart watching until darkness hid all. 3 days later, horns on the western hill signaled a rider. Robb descended to the courtyard where a young lord of House Mallister waited, face pale from frozen gallop. He knelt, breath puffing. "Riverrun relieved," he gasped. The Blackfish stormed siege lines under moonless sky. Lady Sansa Stark opened postern from within. She claimed to bear Tywin's seal, tricked the guards, slit ropes. They struck from 2 sides. Lion camp scattered. Grain barges already sail north under Mallister banners. Cheers erupted. Robb lifted the boy. "Where is my sister?" "Safe within Riverrun's halls. She bade me carry this." He produced a raven feather tied to strip of direwolf fur, stained with wine. The message burned onto hide. "Red Fork flows green." Robb understood, rivers freed, fields safe. Elated, he climbed tower. Scouts confirmed Tywin's supply wagons lost in the rout, thousands of bushels gone. Days later, Manderley ships pulled upriver bearing sacks of grain escorted by Riverrun skiffs. Wolf horns rose along the walls. Tywin, faced with starvation and no path north, broke camp and retreated down the river road. Robb allowed no pursuit. Winter roads would claim more men than swords. He ordered patrols to shadow line columns, hairy stragglers only. Then he called council. "We hold the Twins and river," he said, "but our true enemy marches unseen beyond the wall. Jon speaks of dead that walk. Bran's dreams hint danger. It is time the realm learns." Some lords balked. Southern kings won't heed ghost tales. Robb slammed fist on oak. "Then make them heed steel. We march come thaw, not to seize seat but to warn. If they refuse alliance, we show them the north stands with life itself." He looked to Howland Reed. "Your swimmers will carry word through channels to Bravos and beyond. Perhaps the Dragon Queen hears. Fire may meet ice." Reed's eyes glittered. Old songs speak of that balance. Spring's first brittle sun found Winterfell's banners flapping over the Twins, over Riverrun, over Moat Cailin rebuilt. Sansa returned north with envoys from Tully and Manderley, greeted by cheers. She knelt at the godswood root and thanked forgotten spirits for new strength. Jon rode east to recruit free folk allies, bearing parchments sealed with direwolf and open hand. Robb stood upon the parapet he'd once defended with sword now sheathed. Below, children chased each other across thawing courtyard, laughter mixing with hammer clang as smiths repaired armor for next march. He watched them run with fierce tenderness. Gray wind pressed flank against Robb's leg, amber eyes fixed south where snow still cloaked hills. Robb stroked the wolf's head. "Soon," he murmured, "we ride to tell a kingdom winter's truth. Somewhere distant, beyond seas yet to freeze, dragons stretched wings over desert. Beyond walls' frozen crest, an ancient cold rumbled awake. But in the heart of the riverlands, a bridge rebuilt by trust spanned more than water. And upon that bridge stood Robb Stark, no longer boy, not yet crowned, holding out his hand to lords of every house, north and south alike, inviting them forward into a new dawn where wolves, lions, and dragons would decide together whether the world of men would conquer death or be devoured by it. Snowflakes melted on his glove as sun climbed. He smiled, turning toward the gate where riders readied banners of gray and white. The march had only begun. The north remembered, and now, at last, so would the realms beyond. The sun rose over a land that looked more like a vast field of broken glass than any kingdom men might claim. Late winter light scattered across the half-melted river, shards of ice drifting downstream like pale banners torn from vanished hosts. Robb Stark stood upon the tall parapet of the Eastern Twin and watched those shards bump and spin, feeling the slow gnaw of the thaw against his boots the same way he felt it against the war. Inevitable, patient, irresistible. He had learned patience these last moons. Now he meant to wield it like a sword. Gray Wind's black-tipped ears twitched beneath him. The dire wolf had slipped from the kennels before dawn to find his master, as he always did, padding through corridors that still smelled of fry treachery and fresh-laid chalk dust where masons patched arrow scars. Robb reached down to scratch behind one ear. "Soon," he murmured. The wolf's golden eyes tracked a single flow of ice until it slid beneath the western arch and was lost. Below, the yard crackled with activity. Glover carpenters lashed spruce poles into wagon frames. Serwyn smiths hammered horseshoes over coals so hot the snow hissed to steam. Cranagmen wove fresh reed pontoons, and every half hour a Manderley quartermaster shouted a head count in his deep, rolling harbor voice. The north had come as one, yet it was still a fractured sword. Some pieces straight, some jagged, none yet set into a single unbreakable edge. That would be Robb's task before the roads dried. Footfalls sounded on the stair, and Sansa emerged, cheeks pink from the wind, a white fur hood framing the copper of her hair. She carried no parchment this morning. All her letters had flown. "The grain wagons from Riverrun reached the outer bailey," she said, stepping beside him. "Maester Vyman says we have stores enough to feed every man through summer." "That's stores," he corrected gently, "but not fodder for 30,000 horses. It will do for now." He glanced at her. The gray cloak of Winterfell lay heavy on her shoulders, the dire wolf pin at her throat glittering with frost. She bore it better each day. "I had word from Jon before sunrise. He and Tormund Giantsbane reached the Gifting with 500 free folk. They're turning east, skirting the Umber's herds until the pass is clear." His mouth quirked. "You should have seen Gretchen's reply, half threat, half delight." "I would have it copied," she said, smiling. Then her gaze drifted south, where far hills shimmered beneath a haze of ice fog. "Do you think Lord Tywin truly means to fall back and wait? If I were Tywin Lannister, I would ride south to make famine my sword, but pride tethers him. He'll strike again, though where I cannot yet see." Robb tapped knuckles on cold stone. "That is why tonight's council matters. The lords expect great banners and bolder speeches, yet half of them fear what lies beyond the wall more than lions' claws. They need purpose. And hope," Sansa said softly. "I learned in King's Landing. A starving child will march behind the cruelest lord if he offers bread and a promise." Robb's eyes lingered on the river. "Then we must offer more than promises." A gull wheeled overhead, crying its hunger at gulls on the other bank. He straightened. "Come. There is something you should see." They descended the winding stair, crossed the bridge of the eastern tower where new forged rivets smoked in the morning chill, and entered the smaller courtyard now dubbed Reed Yard for the crannog huts that ringed its perimeter. At the center waited a line of riders in mottled cloaks, marsh warriors, blackwood longbowmen, and 3 women in scaled leather bearing the Mormont she-bear sigil. Beside them stood 2 rangy youths robed in black. Night's Watch Rangers recently freed from oath by Lord Commander Gior's dying decree. At Robb's approach, they all bent knee, though one of the bear women merely tilted her chin in the brusque Bear Isle fashion. This, Robb told Sansa, is the winged column. They leave at dusk. He gestured to the lead ranger, a lean man with a scar where an ear should be. Ser Kedge White Eyes will guide them along the rocky spines of the Mountains of the Moon, beyond any Lannister patrol. When spring melts the passes, they cross into the Vale. The Vale, Sansa echoed. But the Lord Protector is a boy we once called cousin, ruled by hunger and fear, Robb finished. Stars and snow have shown me no aid from Lord Robin, whatever Lady Waynwood writes. So we send an embassy to someone who might command the Eyrie even more than he does. He held out a sealed parchment. Our Aunt Lisa, she placed all trust in her Jon Arryn once. If she sees Stark courage in these envoys, some who served beside her late husband in Robert's rebellion, she may yet grant us her gates. Sansa exhaled. The parchment bore a sickle moon seal pressed in dark red. How can we be sure? How are we sure of anything? Robb's smile was thin but earnest. We gamble on the hearts of men or women. If the gods favor us, the winged knights ride in the second summer of war. If not, we still prove that wolves honor kin. Sansa reached out and touched the fold of the letter. When this flies, let it carry a sister's plea as well. It does, he assured her. Your words your own, sealed within. He nodded to Ser Kedge, who rose. Ride careful. Kedge tapped fist to chest, and the column wheeled, horses crunching frost-hardened straw beneath hooves as they cantered for the postern gate. Sansa watched them vanish into mist. You craft webs, brother. Something Arya once scorned. Robb barked a soft laugh. Arya would still scorn them, but I spin what I must. His face sobered. Tonight I propose another strand. One no lord expects. A pact with the Dragon Queen. Sansa's breath caught. Daenerys Targaryen? Her envoys land on Dragonstone, the birds say. Dragonstone lies nearer White Harbor than King's Landing. If Davos Seaworth's me. Sages be true. The Queen sails west to break Joffrey's rule. We can meet her at sea, not in battle but in oath. Sansa felt the stone beneath her sway. The realm would call that treason. The realm already named me traitor when I knelt, he said, voice edged. I will not have the North devoured by ice because pride alone forbids alliance. He turned to her. Would you counsel otherwise? She thought of Drogon's wings across her dream, of a realm where children burned as well as starved. I would counsel caution, she said, and mercy. Dragons burn more than armies. He studied her face. We will need your voice tonight, Lady of Winterfell as much as Stark's sister. Sansa drew the cloak tighter. Then I will speak. That evening, the great hall echoed with a buzz like a hive. Seats carved from the Frey's high table had been pried up and replaced with rough benches arrayed in a half-circle about the central hearth. Shields of every northern house adorned the walls. Some new painted, others still patched where linewood arrows had scarred them. Robb took his place on the plain oak chair at the curve's center. Sansa sat to his right, Maester Vyman at her shoulder, inkpot and quills ready. Jon's seat at Robb's left remained empty. He had not yet returned from scouting ice thickness beneath the broken western span. Lords, Robb began, voice cutting through the chatter, fell away at once. We gather to decide the shape of coming spring. 3 winters threaten us. One wears a lion's mane, one walks in dead flesh beyond the wall, and one flies in scales of fire across the narrow sea. Murmurs. He lifted a hand. We face them not alone. Word from Castle Black, Lord Snow, he could not suppress the smile, has rallied free folk beneath our banners. They build stockades along the gorge, cut ice for forges, and raise watchfires 5 leagues apart. The Night's Watch stands thousands strong again. Lady Meage slapped the haft of her axe against floor timbers. That's one winter bitten. Robb inclined his head. The lion remains. Tywin Lannister holds our southern road, yet he bleeds. His supply lines break. Riverlanders harry his rear. and his treasury drains as fast as his pride. When the Olaf spur pass clears, we march and end his hold. Roars of assent shook the rafters. Robb waited until they ebbed. But to end the lion is not enough. Beyond seas, dragons stir. Daenerys Targaryen claims birthright and commands fire. We may greet that fire as foe or as shield. The words crashed like axe on shield wall. Gracjan's successor, a brawny Umber cousin named Harthane, shoved to feet. A wolf needs no dragon's leash. Lady Mormont rose too. Mad King's egg, she'll roast us all. Robb held up both hands. Madness dies with mad kings sometimes. Listen. He motioned to Sansa. She stood, palms damp in gloves, but voice steady. I saw King's Landing rot from within, she began. I watched children trampled for stale bread. I watched wildfire swallow innocents who cheered the wrong jest. The city starves. A dragon can break chains or forge them. If we treat with Daenerys, we bargain from strength. We hold the north, the riverlands, and perhaps soon the Vale. We ask alliance, not fealty. She let silence hang. Harthane's beard bristled. Alliance buys what? Safety, Sansa answered. And grain. Dragonstone's harbor can feed more than ships. Its queen commands the Summer Islands harvest. If she brings food while lions bring nothing but swords, the realm will choose her. She looked around. Would we rather face her alone once her dragons darken our skies? That picture chilled even Harthane's roar. He dropped back to bench. Maester Vyman cleared throat. A raven from Bravos this morn, he said, lifting scroll. The banks freeze Joffrey's loans. His grace defaults on 250,000 gold. Bravos now courts new claimants. Robb spread hands. We offer them the queen with dragons, or she claims them without us. He turned slowly, meeting each lord's gaze. I send an embassy, 10 ships from White Harbor, crewed by sailors who outran krakens. They sail to Dragonstone with letters of pact. The North will defend her claim against Lannister and Baratheon in exchange for recognition of Northern rule and a pledge to fight the cold dead should they breach the wall. We share iron, grain, maesters, glass candles, whatever ends night. He paused. This is no surrender of crown. It is a shield brother's oath. Murmurs swelled, wave against shore, but less fierce now, more thoughtful. Lady Meege glowered yet folded arms. Howland Reed whispered to Glover. Wyman Manderly burped and murmured, Dragons make fine soup, if you keep scales off. Then a voice surprised them all, old Lord Garce Goodbrook, minor bannerman whose vassal fields lay near the wall of trees. I rode south when King Aerys burned Lord Stark and Lord Tully, he croaked. I lost brothers to dragons then, yet I've lost grandsons to lions, and more may die to walking dead. My hall has no surfeit of heirs. He straightened bony spine. I dine with devils for peace. Let the wolf treat with dragon. We can snap our jaws if she snaps first. Heads turned. One by one, the other lords nodded, some grudging, some eager for fresh ally. Robb felt breath loosen in his chest. So be it. We draft terms tonight. At first thaw, ships sail. The council turned to lesser matters, watch rotations, slab counting, tunnel reinforcing. Sansa sank back into seat, shoulders trembling with spent nerve. Robb squeezed her hand beneath table and whispered thanks. The night wind rose, rattling shutters. Jon Snow returned an hour past moonset, cloak rimed in frost, cheeks raw. He entered Robb's solar as guards lit fresh tinder. Ice stands 2 feet thick where the lion camped, he reported, but thin upriver. Spring cracks it by the hour. Tywin moves slow, his foragers desert. Robb poured warm cider. And the dead. Jon's eyes darkened. We burned 2 whites near the Barrow graves. They where old knights watch black. Men lost years past. The magic spread south in nights no longer bitter. Fire ended them, but their eyes. He bowed head briefly. Robb felt chill deeper than winter. We must hold Tywin until Dragon Pact forged. Then march on wall, lion or no lion. He steadied Jon's mug with one hand. Tonight we agreed. Jon sipped, eyes widening. Dragons. Alliance if we tame it. Jon nodded. Fire defeats ice. Robb smiled grimly. Or burns all. We'll find balance. He turned parchment toward him. You sail with the embassy. If she trusts any man, it may be one who stood the wall. Jon hesitated. And leave you? You lead free folk now. They follow you beyond the sea of ice. They will follow across sea of salt too. Show the queen a realm of men, not lords alone. Jon closed eyes, exhaled. Then I go. Weeks slipped into each other, marked by the scud of clouds and the slow sun of northern spring. Fry carpenters replaced charred timbers. Banners faded by smoke were re-dyed. Garrons fold spindly-legged colts in mews. Under Maester Vyman's hand, parchments flew. One to Lady Barbary Dustin offering peace for bones of Eddard Stark. One to Lord Hoster's widow in Seaguard requesting river pilots. 100 to Hill Clan chiefs inviting them to feast once passes cleared. One clear dawn, the white knife itself cracked free, and the fleet of Manderley grain ships rode upriver like plump silver fish, sails fat with the scent of cinnamon. That same day, Jon's embassy sailed from the Wolf's Den Keys. 10 lean war caravels, hulls tar-black, masts bright as frost. Ghost stood figurehead on the prow of the lead ship, eyes painted scarlet. Sansa watched from the palisade. When the final sail vanished beyond the bend, she whispered a prayer to the Wintertown Sept, to the Weirwood, to the Mother all at once. Night fell. A haze of aurora shimmered green across the sky, dancing above the twins as if Daenerys's dragons already answered. Robb walked the battlements, gray wind silent beside. Behind them, torchlight spilled from the armory where armorers etched new runes into boiled leather. Ice, fire, wolf, flame. He looked at the sky's ghostly light. Old magic, he murmured. So the maesters claimed. The aurora rippled, pale green fingers stretching toward distant south. Find us, he whispered to those distant dragons, to whichever gods he had left. Far south, across a cobalt sea, a black dragon soared around the peak of Dragonstone's volcanic tower, screaming into the gloom. On the wind, perhaps, or perhaps only in some sorcerous echo, its cry met the echo of that northern whisper. Daenerys Targaryen stood on a battlement of black-fused stone, silver-gold hair whipping in salt gale. Behind her knelt Grey Worm, bearing a raven scroll sealed with Direwolf's head. She read it thrice, each time slower. A king without crown, she murmured, offering a bargain no usurper ever dared. She closed her eyes, memories flickered, of Viserys' spite, of Khal Drogo's last breath, of Astapor's red streets, of Myreen's broken chains. She felt the wind again and pictured winter's dark. Ice conquers without mercy, she whispered. Fire at least warms first. Drogon settled on Tower Rim, yellow eyes vast as lanterns. She touched his scale. We fly north at dawn. At the twins, Sansa woke to ravens shrieking. She hurried to the rookery. Maester Vyman already untied the scrolls. One bore Jon's broken-nosed wolf sigil, safe at sea, sails red with dawn. Another, smaller, carried the silent black seal of the Night's Watch. Rangers sight dead things at the last river. 3 days' march south of Wall.
No signature.
Only that. Sansa pressed both to her breast. The storm gathered from all ends now. Lion retreating, ice advancing, dragon flying. And the north, at last unbowed, stood in the crosswind. Robb called his captains to the parapet as the day broke, gold and steel. They donned cloaks of bear, boar, trout, and other sigils, but each pinned with wolf head, silver shining beneath new sun. We ride to the Bar Rollins, he declared. We build a beacon of our own. Fire bright enough for dragons to guide by and lions to fear. We raise a tower taller than the Nightfort's shell and light it with the oil of broken fry ships. The world will see that winter was built by wolves. Horns answered. Riders thundered onto the frost-slick causeway, banners snapping. Sansa watched from the gatehouse, heart quaking with dread and wonder. She thought of Tyrion, still in King's Landing, playing his dangerous game of coppers and whispers. Of Arya, lost to rumor in far-off riverlands. Of Bran and Rickon, shadows on the edge of dream. She thought of Jon on that rolling sea. So many threads the gods wove, knots tightening. She saw them in her mind like the stitches she once sewed. Lion gold thread fraying, wolf silver thickening, dragon gold burning through all. The wind carried hoofs thunder away. As it faded, one could almost hear the distant creak of a wooden wheel, some cosmic spindle turning, and the soft snick as the next card slid across a game board where ice and fire were no longer merely words. Southward, the lion retreated, but not in peace. Tywin Lannister's knights torched every hamlet unwilling to yield stores, leaving black scars across the snow. Songs followed him. The hungry lion children whispered, "Old Red Death," grown folk cursed. When a new raven came from King's Landing, Joffrey dead of a sudden fever, Cersei claiming regency for Tommen. Tywin's face set like stone. "More reason," he muttered. "We end the wolves before the realm crowns a dragon." He summoned Ser Adam Marbrand with the last 2,000 fresh Westerland's horse. "Ride the Gold Road," he commanded. "Hire Sellswords in Lannisport, pull every coin from Casterly vaults, and meet me at Ashford by midsummer. I will not have gold weigh down coffers while dragons circle."
Ser Adam bauð.
The gold lions on his cloak seemed dull under siege-scarred light. In a nameless village beyond Maidenpool, Brienne of Tarth paused outside a half-burned barn to watch clouds gray as steel. She had followed a whisper of Arya Stark here, another track grown cold. The small folk gaped at her blue steel and maid's cloak but offered no news save tales of wolves in the north. She turned west, toward the Trident, where rumor said the Hound rode alone, haunted. She thought of a vow made by a mother now dead. She wondered whether vows held in worlds where the dead walked. She decided yes and mounted her horse. Across the Sea of Dorne, on sun-washed terraces of Sunspear, Prince Doran Martell read the same direwolf letter, translated into proper Valyrian by Illyria's deft hand. He traced a finger over the name Daenerys. "Fire for ice," he whispered. His gout-swollen feet throbbed. "Perhaps at last my sister's murder will find answer." He summoned his captain of guards. "Recall our ships," he ordered. "When dragons land, Dorne will not stand idle." In Old Town's citadel, Archmaester Marwyn shut a dusty tome as ravens cawed above. He too received the wolf letter. He too smelled old magic stirring. "Dragons, others, green dreams," he rasped. "Time the maesters left their towers." He donned a cloak of mottled gray, grabbed his staff and left the library without closing the door behind him, an omen that made lesser maesters blanch. North of the wall, Tormund Giantsbane watched as Jon Snow's free folk dug ditch fires that burned blue in night's cold. "You think your dragon queen comes?" the giant man asked, rolling frost-rimmed beard between fingers. Jon stared into flames. "I think winter comes. Who meets it first? Dragon or crow or wolf? The fire must be ready." Ghost sat beside him, eyes reflecting embers like two waning moons. Back at the twins, on a soft spring dusk, Sansa Stark climbed the western tower now open to stars. The broken half of the structure formed a jagged amphitheater exposed to sky. She carried parchment stitched with silk, verses she had written after the flight of Jon's fleet. She stood at the brink where charred stone met empty air and recited to the night. "O wolf that howls, on frosted bridge, O dragon wheeling high, sky breaks and snow finds fire tonight, together or worlds die." Her words drifted on wind. Above her, the first summer lightning flickered, forks of white dancing across clouds like quills across parchment, writing the next stanza in the saga of ice and flame. She lowered parchment, heart steady. Far away a horn sounded. Robb returning from the bar Rollins. She smiled. Tomorrow would bring fresh counsels, more plans, new fears. But tonight she savored the hush that comes before thunder. A hush pregnant with hope. True hope, carved from snow, tempered in dragonfire, hammered on the anvil of every sorrow they had borne. The hush before dawn. She folded parchment, tucked it under cloak, and descended the stair toward the lamplit courtyard where the future waited, blades to sharpen, songs to compose, battles yet to win. And somewhere across truth's wide sea, wings beat in answer, carrying a queen whose arrival would set the world alight, one way or another. The game spun on, but for the first time, Sansa Stark believed the board itself might melt, reshaped by hands bold enough to touch it. For the first time, winter felt like a beginning,